Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. What's up, DB?
Hello.
What's going on?
I'm good, man. How are you?
You know, just hanging out.
Yeah?
Making my way downtown. No, sorry, that's Vanessa Carlton. That's my bad.
That's the one where she was like playing the piano on the back of the car. And I need you. And I miss you. And yeah, not gonna get me. Not gonna get me.
Karaoke day here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Got a door. That's it.
That's all you got today?
That's it. That's all I got on the old Rep OI tree.
You know, that's fair. You probably don't need
with the little thing.
You probably don't need to know more Vanessa Carlton's 1,000 Miles than that.
No. Again, God bless the English language. Trying to explain to people how to sound out repertoire.
Yeah, I don't think most people that are English first language speakers know how to spell that or pronounce that correctly. Yeah. Certainly can't spell it.
But I was just caught out of the corner of my eye. This was hilarious. Mm-hmm. You know, like he was mad.
Who?
Garrett Cole.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he thought he was going to get another inning or some more pitches.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing is I think he bet on himself at Warhorse. Because I think it was 5.5 Ks. And he got the 5.
Gotta get that over, baby.
I think that's what it was.
Gotta get that over, money.
It's like, look, man. The heck with these umpires getting in trouble and suspended for gambling on baseball.
You think you just went all
allegedly?
You think he went all just Jonte Porter and was like, I'm betting on myself?
Yeah, man. He's like 5. What do you mean?
Although I guess
the number was 5.5.
I guess that's bizarro, Jonte Porter, because Jonte Porter would have been like, ooh, I'm a little tight at like 4 strikeouts.
Tweet.
He'd be like, a little tweet.
Yeah, yep. Instead of 8 minutes tonight, coach, I think I'm only good for 6.
I like that Jonte Porter thought he had to check himself out of a game to hit his unders.
Yeah.
That's adorable. He was hitting those mugs regardless.
Can you imagine? You know, he's wide open for a corner 3, and they're like, shoot it! He's like, nah.
Just the pump fakes?
Yeah. I think I'm good. I'm way good.
No, you know, it'd be so, you just like, you do that like step back where you accidentally step out of bounds. You're like, oh, shoot. You know, because guys do that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy peasy.
100%.
It'd be less obvious and be like, oh, my tummy doesn't feel good.
Well, remember, we saw a stretch of that where it appeared people didn't know that.
Creighton struggled with that a lot in the last.
Corner 3, the line was pretty close.
Man, there's not a lot of room in the NBA.
Nah, man, don't be wearing any size 13s or.
No, you got to wear those tight sneaks.
Yeah.
The toit.
Here we go.
Coming up on the show today, look at me getting the lineup out early. We got
what is going on?
We got Brian Edwards, Vegas Insider, at 8:45. At 9, we've got Michael Bruntz, Husker 24/7. At 9:45, we're going to talk to Barry Tramel. He wrote a really interesting piece yesterday regarding the naming rights of the Big 12 specifically. He's a long-time columnist in Oklahoma and the Tulsa world. And he's a guy we've talked to about the Big 12 a lot in the past.
Yeah.
So wanted to get his kind of perspective. And
I think I can find a way to work in a Russell Westbrook question.
Oh, for sure.
No, I won't do that.
I think you could.
No.
Just sneak it in there.
No.
You want me to ask him if KD's really as insufferable as he seems?
No.
Is that a leading question?
Yes.
Is that one of those leading questions you don't like? Yeah,
I am totally gun shy on trying to prove points and make a reach. I put a hypothetical yesterday and didn't explain it until after what I was trying to do, and I was like, "See, that's coworkers' loyalty right there. Like that's just on a dime. Like, no, she'd just look out. You went through all that, prove a point. I'm like, hey, simmer, Donna."
Donna Summer?
Yeah, Simma Donna. So I thought in my head today, I'm like, you know what? I don't need to be right. I'm going to just.
Yeah, right.
Oh, because I got super creative.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's just because you ever get in those zones where it's like, we're just comparing and contrasting, like, you know, when work would go to bat for you, when work wouldn't. Like working on a team, you know, like, expectation, like everybody doing their homework, kind of like that, like in a group project. So anyway, after we ended up eating or whatever. By the way, still don't know why Ryan likes you, but God, it drives me crazy. I think it's the Florida State thing.
Probably.
Yeah. So
I'm also a good hang.
yeah, I don't know.
It's a challenge.
Exactly.
I might be a limited doses guy, and you just get too much. Like Ryan only sees me infrequently enough.
But here's the thing. You know the beauty of it? Like you made the cut. Like I would contemplate you on the weekends.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Like
Coach Cooper. Yeah.
I'd contemplate.
Yeah. So anyway,
Wouldn't actually do it yet, but I think about
was done bouncing hypotheticals and solving all the world's problems yesterday with coworkers needing to be coworkers. I was like, I think I'm going to chill and trying to prove a point for a while. Sometimes it's just not worth it. Or I should explain what I'm trying to accomplish ahead of time. But it wouldn't have worked as well.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean?
Well, it depends on who you're talking to. Like, it depends on the person in the situation. Like, I'm a person, if you tell me what you're trying to accomplish ahead of time, I'm way more helpful.
Yeah, it would have defeated the whole example.
Sure. But, like, there's situationally, obviously, where it makes sense. But, like, we heard Corey Campbell talk about this the other day, where he's like, we don't do anything until the guys know why we're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm one of those guys. If you tell me what the end goal is, what we're trying to accomplish, I am way more useful. If you're like leading me through the dark, I'm gonna be the whole time. Just be like, "What are we doing?"
If I start out with the premise, I'm like, "Hey, listen, if you're part of a team,
mm-hmm.
like, they'll look out regardless. Mm-hmm. Like, doesn't matter what it is."
Sure, yeah.
And then you give like a made up hypothetical. Like, do you think the point would still have been received if they knew the end game before you went out on a limb?
I mean, maybe it just depends on how that person's wired. Honestly, I really do.
Well, you ain't kidding.
I mean, like, I'm serious. Like, I am one of those people that, regardless of like trying to prove a point, whatever, it lands better with me if I know where you're trying to go.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, I receive things better where it's like, okay, this is what we're trying to do here, so I know. Because sometimes,
is that a gender thing? Do you think, or is that a individual thing?
I think it's an individual thing.
Yeah.
Because for me personally, I know a lot of people that are just like, hey, you tell me this, we go do this. When you need this, I do this. Whereas for me, I'm one of those people that, because I will read into a lot of things,
mm-hmm.
if I know we're pulling in the right direction
mm-hmm.
to start off with, and I know what direction that is, then I'm more able to be like, okay, this person is telling me X, Y, and Z. Maybe it didn't hit me right, but I know what the goal is. And I know what they're trying to accomplish, so it's easier for me to navigate.
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So on a sports example, I just asked a player last week
mm-hmm.
About a position move. He's young,
mm-hmm.
but he's going to be really good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's going to be good. And I'm like, hey, I don't normally do this with the player, but I actually called his dad first.
Mm.
That was more out of respect. But I had already talked about it with Coach Queen. Then Coach Queen, well, he was supposed to, but we're kind of afraid of Coach Lamonji, so I ran it up the flagpole. And he shot it down, like, the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day, he's like, okay, let's kind of revisit it. Let me, like, walk me through. And then kind of set the end game expectation of, because it's not bold, but it's a different train of thought to try to ramp up for the long haul.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, how advantageous would it be to just say what the end game is?
Yeah.
And roll the dice, because you have to, like, fast forward apart. Now, this is assuming that we're in the thick of things at the end of the year.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to, and sometimes as coaches, you have to be kind of, or people in positions when they're going to try to project the end game, you have to know that you're assuming something.
Mm-hmm.
And it has yet to happen, and you can be spooked by that.
Well, and
it's
100%.
Like,
well,
you have to be able to say that out loud,
especially with a player like you're talking about.
And he's just a sophomore.
It's okay. What do we get here from? How you have to weigh needing him to get to that assumption versus needing him to complete that assumption.
Yeah. So
right?
I told. So after I talked to everybody involved, then I was like, okay, let me talk to the player,
mm-hmm.
which I don't know. I don't wouldn't normally do that a ton, but I do think he is unique in terms of his. He's very mature. And we had some interchangeable parts. I'm like, hey, we've seen this blueprint work before. We did this with this one kid where we put him at this position, and 2 years later when he graduated, he didn't play that position, but it was the way that we could.
Yeah.
Plus, it could help schematically down the road.
Well, I mean, also there's just a certain value of getting guys on the field,
And I have to trust that he can handle that. So that's the part with.
You have to be able to trust they can handle the end game.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So if I walk you through where I want you to be, and then I go through it anyway, it's like.
So that's totally understandable. And I think there are some people where it is you kind of just sit there and you go, okay, this person probably needs to take it one step at a time. I probably don't need to project the vision for them, because sometimes people get either overwhelmed by the totality of it, or they get kind of lost in the weeds, or they can't like stay in this step knowing all the steps ahead. Like I've met people like that too, where you do kind of like it's best for them just to be like, hey, I don't need to know. Just tell me what you need me to do next.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
And then there's people like me who are like, hey, tell me what it's supposed to look like at the end, and then we can get there together.
Would you do that with position development?
What it's supposed to look like at the end?
Yeah.
I mean, again,
because sometimes it can clearly backfire in relationships. So let's go to like
development. My default would be yes to do it that way. But I would also try and recognize if guys kind of like we're drowning a little bit in
and you have to trust that the people that are taking on the information can
handle it. Yeah. Because this is a weird example, but it got me thinking about it because of Corey Campbell and the strength and conditioning stuff. There was this viral video probably 10 years ago of this strength and conditioning coach. I want to say it was like Louisiana Lafayette or somewhere, where these guys are doing.
Okay.
You know what wall sits are, right?
Yeah.
So they were doing wall sits, and they have plates on their lap, and then the strength and conditioning coach is walking across the plates. And the first thing I think is, what the F are we doing? Like, what? Why? This seems idiotic. It seems borderline dangerous. What's the end goal here? Like, why is this a good idea? And if somebody had been able to tell me, I might not have agreed with the methods, but if at least somebody had been able to tell me, like if I'm on that team and some dude's walking across a 45-pound plate on my lap and I don't know exactly why that's happening, I'm going to have a real hard time with that situation.
Really?
Yes. That's idiotic.
Well, that seems a little excessive.
No, okay. It's really dumb.
So, like, could he have said something as simple as, hey, this extra, whatever he weighed, this extra 204 for these 2 seconds that it takes me to walk across is the mental strain on a 3rd and 10. And you'd have been like, oh. Like what? You know what would have made what would have sufficed?
You know what? And maybe this is because, and maybe I wouldn't have been thinking in the moment because they're 19 and I have done the strength conditioning thing, so like maybe I obviously look at it differently. But if he'd been like, hey, I know this is weird. What we're replicating is sometimes in football, it's not a static amount of force that is being applied against you. It's going to vary. We're replicating that with me stepping across. It hits you. You have to absorb it, and then it releases.
That's actually really good.
If he had said something like that.
No, that's a really good example on the fly. If maybe you had that one stored.
I did not have that.
It's pretty good.
If he had said that to me, I'd be like, oh, okay. I was like, maybe I'd do it different, but I get what you're trying to do here, and I'd be on board.
So let me just play devil's advocate here for a second.
Because there's a lot of ways you can build mental toughness.
If I'm the person that has to tell you that.
Yeah, you're going to think I'm difficult.
Right.
100%. Yeah, I get that. A lot of people think I'm difficult.
Okay. No, and it would. You in this particular case, I definitely don't think you'd be isolated. Now, you may not get as much pushback because that clearly bothered you. And
I thought it was so
some
dumb.
Strong adjectives for that. But I mean, some people, I do think that's interesting, like picking and choosing to explain the end game, right? Because we've heard coaches, like we heard Coach Rule, right? This is a long time ago, right? Pre-spring. Why would you want to argue with me? Like, why would you come and want to?
Yeah.
Do you know what?
Do you not know that I know that I want what's best for you?
Yeah.
And that I know how to get you there? Yeah, 100%. And I bet that's just hearing him say things like that, it seems like he's the guy that's willing to explain that.
Yeah.
He's willing to, like, if you want to have that conversation, he'll have it with you. And listen, I understand from being the person that wants the explanation, sometimes I have to go get it rather than have it offered to me. Like, so sometimes I have to be like, hey, what are we doing here?
All right. So kind of along the lines of where my mind was going yesterday afternoon. If somebody says to you and they're training you,
Mhm.
hey, what's a good example? Let's do like the build up, tear down, or the good cop, bad cop.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah.
So we say that out loud.
Mhm.
Hey, sometimes I'm going to tear you down. I'm going to give you a little sugar. Hey, there's good cop, bad cop. You worry about sometimes if you say the outcome ahead of time, that the intended audience is like, oh man, he's on that bad cop thing today.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't have the desired.
Yeah, that to me is different though, because that's like a methodology. I'm talking about specific goals.
Okay.
Right? Like
Yeah.
methodology, because I would actually go the other way. I wouldn't be like he's on that bad cop stuff. I'd be like, oh, he's only giving me compliments so he can play bad cop later. That's how my mind would go. Right? He's only saying this so I don't feel some kind of way when he's ripping me a new one later.
Mm-hmm.
So I would, but that's how my mind works too, is I internalize the bad and I kind of find a reason not to believe the good.
You have no idea how ironic that is.
And so like, for me, if I know you're playing good cop, bad cop, then I'm going to find a way to not believe one of them. And then, but if you just are like, hey, you did this really well, you did this really well, I need you to do better here.
So if you're in the position development game,
Mhm.
or, guys are going to obviously maybe think about changing positions,
Mhm.
or there's some early writing on the wall and guys may have to do this. Are you just divulging that game plan, or are you like, hey, ride with me?
Again, I think that in general, I would divulge the game plan, but I do think it depends on the individual. I think you have to have a really good feel on how people process information.
Mm.
And because, like, again, whether it's even something as complicated, I'll say, as long-term positional development, or if it's just, hey, this guy doesn't respond as well to like yelling. Some guys respond really well to like you get in them and you yell at them and they click and they go. And there's other guys you kind of have to put the arm around and you're like, hey, you kind of like you talk kind of quiet and close to him, be like, hey, like what were you seeing there? Because like what I was seeing is you should have done X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
You did A, B, C.
Uh-huh.
Like talk me through that because I'm having a hard time right now. And then they'll talk you through it and be like, okay, I see what you're saying, but really need you to stick to X, Y, and Z. That's what we asked you to do. That's what your teammates are expecting you to do. Like you're having you
have to really be able to gauge temperament.
You do.
Because I was kind of listening to some of those pitching visits on the mound during the CWS yesterday, and I'm like,
oh, those pitchers are the worst.
It's the first thing I was thinking of when you're giving that example.
Pitchers are the worst with it. Because some guys, you can get in them.
Mm.
And then some guys are like real in their head and cerebral and then like real like introspective even while they're pitching.
I'm just the visual, the psychological of what that signified.
Oh yeah. I mean, I know what it signifies for me. Like I get it. Like I really internalize negative. I find a reason not to believe the positives. And then that's like my default, right? So that's what I work against most of the time.
Exact conversation I had.
But again, because I know that about myself.
What is it? Give me the negative positive thing again.
I internalize the negative, and I find a reason not to believe the positive. But because I know that about myself, I also know that if you tell me the end game ahead of time, it's easier not to internalize the negative.
Definitely noted. I like that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if I feel or I get the sense of like, hey, you're upset, but I don't really know I know you're upset about a specific thing, but I feel like there's something bigger at play that I don't understand, then I'm going to have a really hard time navigating that situation. Whereas if you're like, hey, I'm upset right now, obviously in this moment, this is what I'm trying to accomplish, and this is why this thing prevents me from accomplishing that. I'm like, oh, okay, let's fix it. Let's go. That to me is, but again, a lot of people are wired that way.
Yeah, and I think knowing is half of it, right? Because that's the whole key to the development thing. If guys are going to trust.
And knowing if you're
especially early,
the one doing the coaching. And it really does help if you know as the person how you need to be coached, right? Like I've had bosses in leadership positions and stuff like that just the way I needed to be led or coached or mentored or whatever was not in their repertoire. Like it just wasn't there. And so we had a really difficult time working together because it was just like, hey, the thing that I need from you, you don't have in your tool belt. And that's not an indictment on them. It's just hey, this doesn't make any sense anymore, right? Because I can't get any better if you aren't able to coach me in the way that I need coached, even if I'm trying, like genuinely making an effort.
Ryan, we were having the conversation last night about you needing to bring X, Y, and Z to the table, and me as the coach or the developer, whatever, I'll handle the rest. And we're just like, how many people do you think, whether, and this happened to be along the lines of coaching, but it's like that in leadership with, boss, employee, whatever. People are willing to do that, though. I think it's kind of talked about it a little bit with development last week, where it's like, and you said you'd pick the ladder. I need you. And at this point, we were talking about metrics, like speed, right? And I'll teach you the rest.
Yeah, I'll teach you the skills. We'll teach you how to open up your hips and all that kind of stuff.
With the basic baseline.
Yeah, with the building blocks.
Yeah,
right.
I just don't know if most people in position. I assume coaches are, which is why you get into the ready-made versus not ready-made discussion. It should be in the business of I'll do the rest, because that's what teachers do, right?
Yes, I will say the one thing about that kind of makes a distinction is sometimes when coaches say, and I'll do the rest, they kind of get in this tunnel vision of not taking in new information. Like if you go, hey, you bring this and I'll do the rest, but then the player's like, okay, I appreciate you doing the rest.
So I think maybe that's what you like about Coach Rule, because he does strike as a lifelong learner.
Yes.
Right.
He will take in new information and adjust his approach based on that new information. That's something I appreciate, not just about Coach Rule, just people. If you can't take in new information and learn from it and change either your attitudes or behavior because of it, I'm going to have a real hard time with you long term. Coming up next, we will get into more probably sports stuff, maybe some philosophical leadership. It applies all places, but we will get into more. We've got a College World Series final set, and, there's always college football to talk about. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. This is Hurrdat Sports Radio. Getting into some discussions on leadership and player development in that first segment. Good stuff there. It's a weird thing that applies to almost everything, right? And as I'm kind of thinking in the break, as I'm going through what I am asking of people as coaches and leaders and stuff, and I understand it's one of those simple versus easy things again for me. Like it's a pretty simple ask. Is it easy to do? No, not really. Like you have to have, as a leader, coach, mentor, friend, whatever, a leader. You have to have a.
Sometimes it's just in a simple relationship.
Yeah. That's why I threw friend in there at the end. Like it's really, it takes a good level of kind of emotional intelligence to be able to read what the other person needs, and it takes a good amount of emotional maturity from the other person to be able to express what they need. Like it's a two-way street there, and I don't want it to feel like I put that all on the person in either the leadership position or on the person who is the coach or mentor or whatever. Right, because I understand as the difficult one in most of these situations.
You're talking about your personality?
Yeah, myself. Yeah. That I can't expect things from people that I haven't verbalized, right? And so I've tried, and I'll over communicate sometimes because of that. And I think that can also be frustrating for people, but that frustration is like short-lived and like almost gone immediately. Whereas if I just let it sit, that's a long-term frustration.
How much player feedback would you be willing to take in?
I think you have to be willing to take in a lot in order to understand guys' personalities well enough. And you have to be pretty secure in what you do in order to do that. And I think you can set up channels. Like when I was coaching basketball, we would be like, hey, in practice, just let it ride. Like whatever we're doing, just let it ride. If you've got questions, come to me later. We'll talk about it. Like that was just the rule. It's like, hey, we only have so much time. Like we can't bog down practice for this. It wasn't even like, don't call me out in front of people. It was just like, we don't have time. I don't have time to have the explanation when we've got X amount of time to be on the court, right? So as soon as we're done.
Coaches are like that too. Now, ideally.
I was talking as a coach.
No. Coach to coach.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Ideally.
Yeah, it was the same rule on the coaching staff.
Ideally.
100%.
You don't have those questions real time, like you've either pre-practice or your staff meetings or whatever. But there's sometimes you watch it play out on the field or the base, and you're like,
what are we doing?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. No, yeah, that was the same.
It looked a lot better. But
in my head, it looked better.
But don't let that ride.
Yes.
And I've had, and it's just interesting how my head coaches have handled that, right? Like some have, so there's three really good ones, obviously. Juan had the capacity to have the conversation real time because he was more of an overseer.
Sure.
Juan was very, very calculated and smart. So that it took more time to kind of sink in if you were going to have some pause. So it may not get to it that day, maybe that night or the next morning. It was like, okay, so back to, and then the other one, just don't do it until after. Yeah. Doesn't matter what is. And he may be the most receptive of the three.
But it just has to be at the right time.
Yeah.
And it's kind of
just interesting as I played that out in my head.
What do you mean?
Because they all have their advantages.
Sure, 100%.
Right?
Because in real time, you can make the corrections in the moment. You didn't waste whatever if it was a bad idea or whatever was happening. The second one where you give it like 12, 24 hours, then it gives you time to think about it. Yep. Be like, oh no, I maybe understand what this was, and just in the moment,
or needed a different vantage point.
Yeah,
or to see more than one or two people try it.
Yeah, and then you get through it, and you're like, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the third is obviously you don't interrupt practice, but you get to it pretty quickly. And then obviously the coach being receptive to it is kind of the biggest key there too. But it's kind of funny you mentioned the kind of overseer role, because when I was coaching, I was an assistant, but our head coach was very hands-on. Like he was the teacher of the group, right? So I kind of, as an assistant, became more of an overseer. And we actually did sort of even build in channels. Like I was the big picture guy. I was like, okay, I'm trying to view this holistically. He's trying to teach a specific thing right now. And we would even sort of build in channels at a certain point where it's like, hey, if you have a question and you're not in the drill in the moment, go talk to Coach Lulla. And he'll either tell you, hey, bring this up to me later, or he'll give you a quick explanation if he's got one now.
Certain amount of trust, too.
Right, yeah. Well, between the coaching staff, for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Because we've been there together for a long time, and we had played together, and he's like, okay, Coach Lulla knows what I want. If he's got a good answer for it on the spot, he can give that answer, right? Because he's not in the nitty-gritty doing the skill teaching and all that kind of stuff, right? And if the player, there's some guys that, players-wise, do better with an answer immediately, right? Because they'll be not checked out, but they'll have a hard time focusing the rest of practice if they're still trying to figure out why were we doing X, Y, and Z, right? So you kind of killed two birds with one stone there. But again, you have to have an immense amount of trust in your other coaches, and the players have to have an immense amount of trust that if I tell you, hey, that's a conversation for after practice, that I'm not just blowing you off, right? That it's not just like, I don't know why we're not doing this or why we're doing this, and I'm blowing you off, and I'm hoping you
forget about it. That also can
it.
Keep you from catching feelings real time too, right?
Yeah.
Like as a player, if it's not, because I just watched a ton of staffs, and some look like they have kind of volatile practices. Others look a little smooth. Others, it's just I just seen lots of variance between those dynamics. But I think it has to start kind of coach to coach before it can go coach to player.
I think that's fair.
At least as I've kind of seen it work in healthier models.
Well, it kind of brings up, we were talking about, like tactics when we were talking about how we never bring up tactics or scheme or whatever with Coach Rule, right?
Very rare.
Almost never.
I don't know anybody that does.
The only person on staff we've talked about tactics with a great deal was when we were learning about the 3-3-5 with T. White. That's about it.
Because we didn't know enough about what the offense was going to look like.
Yeah.
So we didn't really have.
Yeah, and we were learning about the 3-3-5 because we'd never really had it here, and so we're like, let's figure out what's happening with this guy.
Did we talk much about were we general? Did we say power run game? Did we say spread? Did we say? Did we do any of that? Or I can't even remember.
The only person
I think we did say talk about QB run game.
We talked about QB run game, and honestly, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn here because I will if I get the opportunity, but the only person I heard talking about Satterfield is because I had gone back and watched a bunch of South Carolina games. Well, I think we were the only people talking about it, and I was talking about.
I do remember. I knew something hurt me. Gosh, I'm like, what is that?
What is going on?
Anyway, we did break down. We got into this 2 or 3 week stretch.
Yeah,
I think, particularly locally, where we got into how many carries would be too quarterback centric.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
we got into quarterback run game. We got into
designed
quarterback runs.
I do remember that.
And then I was getting really into the weeds on like the 2 tight ends and kind of that Jaheim Bell spot that I was like, okay, Janaron Bonner might have that skill set to be the Jaheim Bell from his team last year at South Carolina. And, I think he's going to use the double tight ends a lot. And I think he designed some pass plays to allow for a quarterback run and things like that. But we didn't have a great idea on what Satterfield was going to do. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't talk about it a ton. But talking about dynamics on staffs, talking about schemes, and even talking about strength and conditioning, there's this kind of old adage in like weightlifting and bodybuilding and powerlifting when you're talking about different plans, right? Different workout plans, different methodologies and stuff like that. And it's basically, it all works. All of it. It all works. If you go lift weights, you're going to get stronger, you're going to get bigger, you're going to get more muscular, right? If you go out and we've seen every type of offense under the sun work at some level, right? Triple option, spread option, air raid, power run, whatever, right? Pro style, it all works, right? If everybody's bought in. Same thing with the coaching staff dynamics, right? All of these work.
Well, there is though a certain level of technical, the execution of it that has to be at a.
Yes.
I don't even know what the baseline would be.
But in general, it's not about the scheme or methodology or whatever itself, because they all work. If done right, they all work. Now, I may have a philosophy about like, well, I'm really more of a QB power run game versus a spread option guy, and I think that works better. But the dirty little secret is everything works if executed right, if everybody's bought in and on the same page. Like there's usually no inherent.
You can run the ball 55 times a game at Minnesota,
or you can throw it 55 times a game at Minnesota if you execute it correctly and if everybody's on the same page. Yeah. I think that applies not just to the schemes, but to the coaching methodologies, to the strength and conditioning. It's sort of a universal truth in most things. We'll wrap up hour number 1 on Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. Wrapping up hour number 1, live from the Pillar Exterior Stage. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We've got a lot going on here in late June. All of a sudden,
dude, this thing is
flying by. We're going to be in Indy in like a month for Big Ten Media Days. We got a lot going on.
I got 2 weeks of team camp coming up.
Yeah, gonna get after it.
Yeah.
You excited?
I am actually.
Doc Sadler.
Yeah.
I know you get geeked up for the coaching stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's like full DB.
And it's a fun year too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
well, it's a challenge, right?
Yeah. I mean, we'll be good enough to be dangerous, but we got
work to do.
We got plenty of work to do.
Like it's a very different dynamic going from last year to this year, right? Is it?
But even at no time last year did I believe Sauter when he said this could go down as one of the greatest teams of all time.
I know you didn't.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. He said it before the season started.
Yeah, and he'd only seen 2.
Yeah, he saw like 2 practices.
Like,
yeah.
And I was like, and I asked him the other day because, I just wanted to, I hate to give him too much credit about much of anything, but I was like, at no point even did I think that, and I see us every day.
Yeah. Well, I think you have an ability to be more in the moment with it as you're in the thick of it. But
yeah.
I also think you knew.
What he was saying was really, really, really lofty.
Yeah, it's a huge statement to make before you played a single game.
Yeah, I'd seen 03 Miller North. I'd seen 14 North. I'd seen 19 Bell West.
Yeah,
I'd seen 85 Prep. You know what I mean? Like that was,
and I mean that's the list, right? Like those.
Well, that West Side 80. I didn't see
83 West Side 82.
I didn't see those guys really because I wasn't really going to games yet.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably about another.
I was like
2 or 3
you were
years.
Young then, yeah.
Yeah. But I do remember like 8 or 9, man, I would be rolling to games with my dad.
And but that's generally the list of the best of all time. So you're looking at, okay, I know what these teams look like.
And I just either had coached against or
seen pretty up close and personal.
Yeah, so I was like,
Yeah. And so, but you still knew that you guys had an opportunity to be really, really good.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think you expected that to be really, really good. It's a different dynamic when you're like, hey, I know what we have here, and we've got to do everything to keep these guys focused and to keep it on the rails and to fulfill what I know is there versus like, hey, we got some developing to do. We've got some challenges to overcome. We've got some coaching to do to get these guys to the point where we think they're a good football team.
Our handbook, like the cultural roadmap, has some of the same main points, but it couldn't look any more different tactically than a year ago.
For sure.
So it's like, But, and I say that to say, I think sometimes I would say this about, and I turned out to be wrong in some capacity, but when I would say about Creighton baseball, it's like at some point when they were beating Nebraska, I'd say at some point you just have to acknowledge this is a good baseball team.
Yeah.
Right? And I still think they were a good baseball team.
Yes.
It's strange, or I'll say, at some point you have to say blank.
Well, like with Nebraska basketball, like at some point you're just like, hey, this team's pretty good.
Yeah.
Like
I did. Yep. I did say that.
I said with the offensive line, at some point last year, you have to be like, hey, this is a pretty good offensive line.
And like with this football team, I think at some point, and I get it, because Coach Rule said that a lot. He's like, you have to earn the right, right? When he was talking about going to Minnesota last year. But at some point, you got to be able to say, hey, you know what? We should win the opener.
Yeah. We should beat UTEP.
We should, and then fill in the blank. And like, don't you have to be able to turn the corner to be able to say that out loud to start to grow as a program? If you, and I get coach speak versus, or the reluctance of a fan base that
or
maybe
external versus internal communication.
Yeah, where maybe we're reluctant to embrace that, but that's okay. Like, it's okay to say out loud, I fully expect to be, and then fill in. At some point, you have to be able to do that.
That's why I can look at, and I know this is taking it further than what you're talking about, but that's why I can look at a schedule, and I'm not going to go, hey, they're definitely getting 8 wins or whatever, but I can look at, that's a winnable game, or that's a game they should win. I'm not taking anything for granted because I saw them lose to Georgia Southern, but like, I can look at UTEP and be like, that's a game you got to win.
Yeah, North Dakota wasn't that long ago.
Right? Like, I can look at that and be like, hey, I saw them struggle for 3 quarters with Buffalo not that long ago. Like, that's a game you got to win. That's a game you got to take care of business early, and that's a game you got to get some reps for some younger guys. So I can look at it and say that and still understand you have to go out and get it.
See, that's so I kind of, my personality says, yeah. But the practical aspect of me doing that, I'm not sure that I'm very consistent in that. So I wouldn't look you in the face right now and be like, oh, yeah. Because I'm very, very, very reluctant to use the word should. But I think I do believe it.
Because Nebraska should always beat UTEP. Always.
You know what I mean?
Like full stop. I can understand they're not always going to, but I can say they always should.
Yeah, I mean,
there's no reason under God's green earth Nebraska should ever lose to UTEP or to Georgia Southern or whoever else, right? Or be down to they need a miracle against McNeese State or whoever, right? Like, I can say those things and it can be true and it's still not happen, right? So I get what you're saying. You want to be hesitant, or you're hesitant because you don't want to take things for granted. You know the work that it takes to go out and still beat a UTEP, right? Because it is work. Or you can't just roll out the ball.
And a lot of it is experience, too. Like, I was talking to what a lot of teams that win championships don't. Some coaches go back and say out loud, typically there's a couple breaks they caught during the season. And normally your said team stays relatively healthy.
100%.
Like, that's kind of luck of the draw.
You know who didn't stay even remotely healthy last year? Nebraska.
Yeah.
At some pretty key spots where they didn't have a ton of depth.
Like, you need to catch
some breaks.
Yeah. You need a check swing not called.
Yeah. Stupid.
No, but I'm just saying.
No, but you're right.
Right? Like, that had to go. You needed that to go Burke's way, and nobody's going to go back and look at that.
Nope.
But I'm telling you,
changes the entire dynamic.
Yeah.
100%. Because guess what? You go 2-0, you're in the spot. I knew Tennessee, whether they lost yesterday to Florida State or not, I knew Tennessee was making the championship one way or another because their pitchers were lined up, they were rested, and that lineup is relentless.
Yeah.
They weren't going to lose to a Florida State team whose bullpen was already shot. With that lineup, they weren't losing that game, or at least 2 games in a row ever. Wasn't going to happen. And I can say that and still... Here's the other thing about the check swing, though, right?
Like you have to.
Tennessee still had to go get it after that. They still had to go get it.
Right.
Like that wasn't the last pitch of the game. It wasn't like it was a wild pitch and the run scored and whatever. And there were still game after that, right? So I can sit here and tell you,
like Burke still had to hit the rock.
Yeah, and a couple guys after him still had to also, right? Like you have to sit there and understand. Yes, that changed the dynamic of the game. Florida State and Tennessee both had the same opportunity after that, and Tennessee took advantage and Florida State didn't, right? Like there is, you still have to go get it.
The practical application of that, sure. But I think the one thing we kind of discount is the ability to handle emotions.
In the moment, 100%.
It's huge.
It is. 100%.
Like,
and I said this in real time at the moment that I didn't think Oxford was in a good mental space when he came into the game, right? So after the check swing, like, yeah, he's in a bad spot. But that him being in a weird spot mentally or emotionally or whatever,
I get it. It's so
I get it.
The greatest thing Gretna did when they beat us in the state championship is how many teams would have wilted with their back against the wall on the goal line?
A lot.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
100%. Especially in a game a lot of people didn't think you were going to win.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'll never, and I've just seen it too much to not. It's like when Montgomery got hurt, and you see them offensively the very next inning. It was like, how'd these guys just light switch that a moment? Like I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
The same as it's what I would rally around if, and unfortunately, Nebraska was on the wrong end of this, but you have 2 turnovers in 17 seconds, and one team got out of their fields immediately. The other did not.
Yeah, the other one couldn't get past it.
And it
changed the course of the game. Changed the outcome.
In mere seconds.
Yep.
Right? So I think, you look at hockey. Like at some point, Florida's got to say to themselves, okay, we got to get over the hump.
Yeah. We got to win one game.
Emotionally. Right. So I just think we totally undersell. Shoot, how long do we make fun of the Celtics and their temperament? Soft, man. They don't stay on the gas enough. Oh man, their superstar says this.
Don't like Jason Tatum, but
their superstar says that, or and it's like I think that is seriously undersold, especially if you want to win at a high level.
It's certainly not something you can ignore, and that's totally fair. I also think it is something you can do. Like you just gave a bunch of examples of people that did it in the moment, and it's hard.
You know who couldn't overcome their emotions, even though they were clearly the better team?
Who's that?
There's no reason Golden State should have folded with. They couldn't rally after Draymond didn't play.
Yeah, 100%.
You almost talked yourself into when we get him back. Like
we can give this one away.
Yeah, just managing things in the moment, I think we way undersell.
And it's way harder than, I can sit here and be like, oh, well, you just have to get past it. You have to go and execute the next pitch. I get it, right? And it's way harder than that.
How many times yesterday?
But it's still true.
How many times yesterday during that and I think we were texting back and forth during Florida and Kentucky, they're like, just throw strikes.
Yeah.
Didn't you want to say that 15 times? You could hear it.
Yeah. Just like, hey, just throw strikes, buds. Coming up next, we'll get to hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. Here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We are back, kicking off hour number 2 on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. You can also catch us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you're not listening live, we appreciate however you are consuming our content on a daily basis. We have, to this daily basis.
Kind of worried about that guy's future.
Yeah, I think it's over.
No, I know that.
Just like long-term future.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well,
there's there's some guys that you wonder about what they're gonna do after it's all over. I feel like he's one of those guys.
To this day,
100%.
Boxers boxing is that's a tough one, man. Like we talk about it with all athletes when they don't really know what to do when they retire. but boxing seems to be one of the hardest, right?
Oh, for sure.
Because you don't need a team to sign you. You just need one person to want to fight you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can.
I mean, at the end of the day.
Like, how old? Like, Mike Tyson's 58.
Yeah.
That man's going to go back out there.
So they pushed that back 2 months?
Yeah.
Because I see he's getting ready to fight Perry.
Yeah, he had a infection or something. Tyson
It was
did. It was.
What do you call that?
Hernia?
Was it a hernia?
Hernia, I think. Yeah. I think it got infected. So I don't know. It was, yeah.
Was it a hernia or an ulcer? No, it was a hernia.
I think it was a hernia. Yeah.
That's the one where you can kind of like drip goo internally.
Maybe. I'm not totally sure.
What's the one like if they, maybe they both are.
I don't know.
If they rupture?
Yeah, and you don't know.
I think that's a hernia.
Okay.
Because ulcer is just like a, it's like a.
What's the one that like
lining
sometimes
deal.
like I have one where little kids, you have that little scar right there?
Yeah, that's
a hernia.
That's a
right?
hernia.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the one.
Maybe it's not that big of a deal.
I mean, probably don't want to fight with it.
No.
No big deal.
No.
Not trying to get somebody to punch me while I got
I
that.
got one of my dogs after hernia surgery.
Really?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think it was Biggie.
Gangster.
Dude, you can talk about run up a litter. It's a little dude.
He's a little dude. He doesn't take nothing from Buddha, though.
No.
That's fun.
No, good and well, he'd get whooped. I don't know. But
Biggie stands on business.
maybe it's just respect.
Probably. That's how it was with when Tally was around. She was the only girl, and she was one of the smaller ones, but she's still on business. Nobody was messing with Tally.
Yeah.
Doug is about 110 pounds of just meatball, and he was like, whatever you say, Tally, we're good.
Going back and did you notice? I'm surprised you haven't said anything yet.
About what?
Your Red Sox are at 5 in a row.
Yeah, they're still not very good.
Golly, man, you're like Denny Downer.
No, listen.
Ravi here for wet blankets.
Sets at his belt, he throws.
So you could not win 5 in a row.
Yeah, I prefer this.
Okay.
But I need him to get 10 games over 500. Then I'll start maybe considering them, because this is what they do. They've been doing this for at least 2 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Where they'll be like, oh, hey, 6 out of 7, nice, all right.
You got to admit though, after whatever 76 or 75 games to have 40 wins, you're good.
Right there, good.
Okay,
not good.
All right,
I'll take it.
They do this the last 2 years. They go, hey, we're going to win 6 out of 8, and then they drop 5 in a row. And then they win 7 out of 10, and then they drop 4 more in a row. This is what they do.
We did jinx the Royals, though.
I didn't do it.
That's 3 in a row.
I didn't do it.
But who's counting?
Maybe.
I mean, Dodgers are still struggling with the Rockies.
But, hey, the Marlins have 2 walk-offs in a row.
I know you rolled your eyes at me the other day. Yeah.
They got 7 walk-offs on the season?
Isn't that the Major League best?
It's the high. And it's got to be by far the highest percentage of wins being in walk-off fashion.
I remember I said to one of our local colleagues, I was like, is this finally the year this staff is going to live up to the billing? And after about 3 weeks of the season, I was like, nope.
Not today.
Nope, just not going to do it. It's like, man, I sure was looking forward to A.J. Puck.
Yeah.
Maybe next year.
Probably not.
Maybe
doing
next
some
year.
good things.
We're going to have to manage. And you rolled your eyes at me yesterday. I wanted to come up here and give you a piece of my mind, but I only have very little left. The Dodgers are going to have to tread water.
With Mookie?
Not exactly the healthiest team.
I don't think I rolled my eyes at you.
Kinda.
Well, maybe. It's hard to tell. My condescending look kind of just come out on their own.
And then I looked up and I was reaffirmed that they still only have 3 less losses than the Phillies, and I think the Phillies are really good.
Yeah, the Phillies are phenomenal. That's why I roll my eyes at you, because you're always like that with the Dodgers. You're like, oh, not very good. And it's like, hey, they have the second best record in the league. And incredible.
Whoa. Au contraire, mon frere. They should be playing in more World Series than they have. And I do understand that it's a difficult sport.
It is difficult.
But let's not, they aren't the Lakers or anything representing.
They have underachieved in the playoffs.
Yeah, 100%.
But regular season, they've been pretty good.
I'm not going to say who cares.
You got to get there.
Because I'd much rather have the opportunity to lose than not get there. And anybody that tells you anything different is lying.
Yeah. Also,
I listened to a fantastic argument yesterday.
Okay.
I think it was it Michelle and Joe? It was somebody.
Mhm.
It's the middle guys that I like in the at noon.
Doug and Daddy?
No, on 590.
Oh, that's Tri-Cities, right. I'd have to look it up.
Joe and somebody.
Mhm.
But anyway, they were. There is a fascinating conversation on dynasties and the dynasty potential of the Celtics, and they were kind of rolling their eyes at it because of the degree of difficulty.
Mhm.
And of course, they reference some different franchises that had opportunities, but it just kind of didn't go their way, and how hard it is. They were talking about the schedule.
Mhm.
You know, how teams that got beat in the first round have been done for almost a month and a half.
Yeah.
It's a long season. All these things that we used to roll our eyes about when LeBron said he played a lot of basketball. But he made it interesting. They made an interesting point about finals, right? Because they were talking about Jordan and dynasties and going 6-0 in the finals, and how that will always be his kind of the ace.
Yeah,
like
it's his trump card.
All
Yeah.
things being equal,
6-0 in the
like
finals.
my man can pull out an ace. And they both said, because they were comparing franchises,
Mhm.
Lakers and Boston, the better franchise. And of course, I think it's Lakers, even though Boston has more championships, just because the Lakers have been in the finals infinitely more times than Boston.
Mhm.
And the pushback from his colleague was, "Would you rather be 6-0 in the finals or go 6-10?" And I think this is just me.
Mhm.
I'd rather be 6-10.
So I think this is one of the dumber
That
arguments.
That fits like in the Lakers. Then I mean they've been there so many times. They've been there 34 times or whatever.
I think one of the dumber arguments for MJ over LeBron is the finals argument, because we're supposed to penalize. They do it to a lesser extent with Tom Brady and Joe Montana. It's like, well, Montana went 4-0. It's like, well, so we're supposed to penalize.
Yeah, Brady's lost quite a few.
Yeah, like we're supposed to penalize LeBron for dragging poverty franchises to the finals.
Yeah, even though Brady's played in 9 Super Bowls in 20 years.
I think that's right. He
Right? Or is it
won
9 and
7.
20?
It might be 10. Did he lose 3? He lost the 2 to the Giants. He lost 1 to the Eagles. Yeah, he played in 10
Yeah, that's
because he
incredible.
won 7.
That's incredible.
Did he only lose 3? Did he lose more than 3? He lost both to the Giants. He lost to the Eagles. Was that it?
Yep, because they came back. They got the Falcons.
They beat the Seahawks. Yeah, so I think that he's made it 10. He won 7 out of 10.
With Tampa.
Would you rather? You think he rather would be? Is it more impressive to be 7-0 or to have gone to 10 Super Bowls and won 7?
7-0.
I said no. No.
Yes. Yes.
Like, do we give Peyton Manning?
I think I'd rather have played in 16 finals than gone 6-0.
Look at just the opposite. If you're the Vikings or the Bills, when you're 0-4, you've gone the 4 Super Bowls, but you're 0-4.
But you're still a better franchise than somebody that's not been to any.
No, okay. So that, in my opinion, is a different discussion, because I think if the Bills would have just won 1,
yes, then that's more impressive than a one-off somewhere else because they went to 4. Like if the Bills had gone 1-3 instead of 0-4. Let's just pretend magical world here. Let's slip into an alternate universe. We'll Doctor Strange this thing. Just get over there. Okay? So let's say the Bills go 1-3. Let's say Scott Norwood makes the kick. They go 1-3 in those 4 Super Bowls, right? That's more impressive, in my opinion, than Tampa Bay one-off.
which turned out to now be 2.
But in that stretch,
in that
right?
stretch,
In that stretch?
yeah.
Like, because that was a good Tampa team.
It would have been better than the 0-2. That was 0-2 that Tampa won it?
Yes, they beat the Rams in 0-2.
Yes, it was.
But they had missed the year before because they had
That was the catch
the
with
Rams.
with
Yeah, the Ricky
Emanuel.
Prohl. There was Ricky Prohl had the big catch for the Rams. Bert Emanuel had the non-catch. It hit the ground. They changed the rule because of it. Like, would we have that team would be considered better if they had made the extra Super Bowl, even if they lost. Even if they still go on, lose to the Patriots.
So I got a question, though, because as the resident Florida State honk, been all to the College World Series all these times. So if they just won 1, you'd be cool? Or would you be the guy that's like, oh, they only won 1 out of the 30 times that they've been here? You know what I mean? So it's like...
Yeah, no, I mean, it's better. It's certainly better if they have won the 1. But I would rather make it to 24 College World Series than be like, they've made it to 4, and, they haven't been able to get across the goal line. right? But going over versus having one is a huge difference.
Yeah, that's why I don't love the. I mean,
the Minnesota and the Bills one's a tough one. Like, let's go. Who's lost a lot of Super Bowls? The Broncos.
Yeah,
they're like 2-4. Is that right? Something like 2-5.
5 maybe.
Because they have they
lost to Dallas in '77.
They lost to the 49ers. They lost to
'77.
The Seahawks later.
That's stretching me.
So they're at least
that was like 77.
2-3, maybe 2-4.
Got blown out by the Niners.
Yep.
See that?
55-10.
Yeah, I remember Elway couldn't win the big one.
Right. So it's 3.
And I was like, wait a minute. I thought he was captain comeback. What do you mean can't win the big one? Like Super Bowls,
yeah,
are hard to win.
And now they've got
now
they've got the 3 because Manning went back and got one, whatever. But for a minute there, they were the franchise that couldn't win the Super Bowl. And then you get one, and all of a sudden, like, oh, you're cool because we've been to 5 Super Bowls and we've got one, and it's a different conversation now when you get the one. When you're an offer, that's a tough pill to swallow, no matter how you cut it.
Mm.
It just is.
Were you thinking the same thing when we had divisions in the Big Ten and you were going to inevitably earn the right to go lose in the Big Ten championship?
I'd rather win the Big Ten West than not.
Yeah, me too.
Because what are we talking about now? Oh, Nebraska couldn't even win a poverty Big Ten West.
Poverty. Now that's poverty?
Right. Like that's real. That's a real narrative about Nebraska. Is like, oh, the Big Ten West was this bad. Like that's people use that as a barometer to tell you how much Nebraska struggled. Mm-hmm. Is they couldn't even break through in a division where Northwestern broke through
twice, I think.
Yeah, right? 19 and 21.
So what if you go 1-0 in the Super Bowl, and your Super Bowl that you win by just an enormous amount. You just crush your team, and then the next Super Bowl you lose. Doesn't that dampen? I mean, you've gone to 2 Super Bowls, but your first one you were just like the greatest team ever in the Super Bowl. And I'm talking about like the Bears because they were 1-0, and then they went 1-1, and when they lost the second time.
No, because you know what? If you're like, let's use Aaron Rodgers as an example because he's been to 1 Super Bowl, won 1 Super Bowl. We would think better of Aaron Rodgers if he had made more Super Bowls.
Who'd Grossman play against again?
That was Colts.
Was it Indy?
Yeah, that was Peyton's first one.
I don't know. I don't really think of the Bears like that.
I don't either, especially because they were so far apart. That's 20 years apart. Like that's a tough spread there. But you're looking at like Aaron Rodgers. We would think better of Aaron Rodgers if he had made more Super Bowls, even if he just wins the one. Because what's the thing we talk about with Aaron Rodgers? We were talking about this last week. For as good as he is, probably should have won more.
Shoot, and I think I'm the one that said it.
You were.
Yeah.
For as good as he is, why hasn't he won more?
Yeah, his statistics are ridiculous.
They're bonkers. Like, they don't have the volume of Brady's, but they're better than Brady's.
So I think real time, the hard part I'm having, like, wrapping my thoughts around is what's the designated, like, when do I
Where's
go
the cutoff?
I appreciate the consistency to,
Yeah,
it'd be nice to win one.
I need you to get you got to win at least one. That's kind of the key. You got to get one.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have one, then you have the narrative of like, oh, I can't win
But I still appreciate.
It's a great example is Jerry West just passed away.
I'll give you a better one. Who was the guy that I told you I was kind of meh about in Carolina history?
Not Vince. You love Vince.
Coach.
Oh, Roy.
But before Roy.
Oh, Dean Smith.
I walked out of the door and I was like, yeah, I'm kind of one of those guys. I'm like,
kind of mad on Dean Smith.
I'm kind of on Dean.
You big Matt Doherty guy said.
He could recruit. Look who he brought in that other guys won with. Good on you, Matt. That's how I feel about Dean.
Yeah, should have won more.
I feel like he should have won more.
Just got the 2. You can make that argument for Bobby Bowden. Probably should have won more. He's got the 2.
But I lack consistency, though. So that's what I'm struggling with.
Yeah, I think
because just hearing me talk about it out loud, it's like, I just gave you one. Mm-hmm. But at some point, when
you're that level of excellent for that long, you have to look at it and be like, probably should have broke through more. But to me, that's different than saying, hey, it's better to have gotten there a bunch of times and not been able to cross the finish line more than once or twice than to say, hey, you probably should have won more. Like, you can say both of
I
those
watch
things.
These guys get whacked by like Michael Doliak.
Like, both of those things can be true, though. Both of those things can be true at the same time. Like, I can still say that Dean Smith or Bobby Bowden or whoever should have won more national titles, and in the same breath be like, it's pretty awesome that Florida State finished in the top 4 15 years in a row.
It certainly doesn't sound right, though.
No, but I mean, because it sounds like a contradiction, but it's really not.
Like, what's my difference between Aaron Rodgers and Dean Smith?
Isn't basketball a little
I
different?
think Aaron Rodgers, I think Dean Smith knew that the earth wasn't flat. I don't know that.
Isn't basketball?
I just think Dean Smith or Aaron Rodgers is so supremely talented more than Dean Smith was a great coach.
That's fair. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's our
because I
person...
think Dean had more peers than Aaron.
That's definitely fair.
But I also know, like, I can say, like, baseball is the ultimate, or football is the ultimate team game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think Nolan Ryan is like one of the greatest underappreciated GOATs. We never talk about Nolan Ryan in the GOAT discussion when it comes to pitching because my man couldn't get a Cy Young.
Yeah, that's a writer's problem, not a Nolan Ryan problem.
But isn't
that's a voter's problem?
But I'm in awe of Nolan Ryan.
If Nolan Ryan existed today, he would have multiple Cy Youngs because we look at pitching differently.
But we also wouldn't let him throw 9 innings either. So
no, but he would still throw more innings than most people. Like, him going 7 every night would be a miracle.
Yeah, because you'd have to fight him probably to get all.
Yeah, and also, like, okay, if he's effective, who cares?
Isn't basketball a little different, though? When it comes to college basketball, I say that because when they use the quantifiers...
You think the Braves will look back and think that they should have won more?
In the 90s, 100%. I think they do. Every Braves fan I've ever talked to, but are any of them mad about 13 first-place finishes in a row? No.
Huh.
Like, both can be true. It can be true. It's like, hey, it was an awesome run. Probably should have gotten a couple more. Like 96 when they're up 2-all on the Yankees, definitely should have got that one. Have to. Can't lose 4 in a row. Can't let Jim Leyritz beat you.
Like, even currently, should the Braves have won more in the last 4 years?
I mean, the Dodgers should have. Not to bring that up, but
they
should have.
Full of metal.
For as good as they've been, the Dodgers should have broke through more. But, again, in the same breath, you've been happy that they've been really good for the last decade, right? It's more fun to watch that they've been really good for the last decade.
This is going to sound like total first world crybaby, but it's kind of frustrating. I know. But I'm just being like, you want me to make it up? Like, those are my real feelings.
Let's go to
let me let him get this out real quick.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Is basketball different how?
The way that they describe teams, as in this team has this many national championships, and then right after that, usually the next descriptive behind that would be this team has this many Final Four appearances. I mean, and then after that, it's whatever line they get to, but they don't say how many times they've been in the championship. They don't say how many times.
Final Four is the line for college basketball. But like, they don't make the distinction really between Final Four and Final for the most part.
I do think that is the one clear universal thought process, because they don't talk about coaches getting over the hump in college basketball in terms of winning championships.
No, it's about making the Final Four.
They talk about getting to the Final Four
because it's kind of a crapshoot,
which is weird.
Yeah,
but I think that's right.
Yeah, Final Four is the holy line of demarcation for college basketball.
Hard pressed to say that's the only sport you don't have to actually win, but it kind of feels
until you make it to 3 or 4.
Because we certainly don't talk about college baseball like that.
No,
we certainly don't talk about college football like that.
But if you like, until you get to like multiple Final Fours, nobody asks the question about you not winning it. You get to several, and people are like, "Oh, are they going to break through ever?"
That's funny too, because I wonder when the shine wore off of.
I
wonder when the shine wore off there in East Lansing.
I'll say, look at Izzo.
I knew you were good. At some point, and like in my head,
yeah,
I'm like, if we stay on college basketball, this dude's coming up.
Because wins the title in 2000, and then they've been really good for the most part for 23 years. And last few, whatever. But for 20 years, they were incredible. Made a bunch of Final Fours. Still just the one title. Has the shine ever? You ever hear anybody? Maybe the last couple of years, right, when they haven't been that good. But before that, anybody ever say a bad word about Izzo?
And
no, it was death, taxes, and Tom Izzo in March.
Yep. I was going to say even as recent as last year.
Yeah, because
we talked ourselves into
Michigan State, Tom Izzo.
Consistency. How about I hate to keep jumping, but we're in college basketball. How about Ware getting a green room invite from Indiana? It's a weird draft.
Might be sitting there a minute.
Where would you be, on your boat somewhere?
Yeah, I'm just vibing.
Who was the great left tackle? Played in Cleveland all those years.
Oh, Joe Thomas?
Yeah, out there on his boat getting the call. It's a top 10 pick.
Listen, I wouldn't want to sit in that room. Unless I knew, I would not want to sit in that room thinking I might be there for 2 hours. Like, you want to talk about tough hangs. You can pan the camera into my living room when it's time.
So you're not going to be the at least I got an invite guy?
No.
At least I played the finals.
No, that's great, but that's a different deal.
Because I'm kind of with Will here. He says, Jordan had 13 postseasons, 7 of those he didn't even make the finals. LeBron has 10 finals and 18. I think both would have rather
made more finals.
Yep.
Everybody would
have had losses than not get their 7 or those 8 seasons.
Because in the moment, Michael Jordan believes if he gets to the finals, he's winning that mug.
I still think it's different for different sports, especially the more.
It is.
The more we talk through it.
It's different for different sports, but there is a point in every sport where you're like, it's better to make it and lose than to not make it at all.
I just think it goes back to the original discussion of you have to catch some. When you're talking about championships,
got to catch breaks.
You need breaks.
100%. Always. There is not a single championship team that you can look at and be like, they didn't get at least a little lucky here or there or wherever else.
Right. Golden State didn't get Love. They didn't get Kyrie.
Yeah.
Right.
But then 2 years later,
Cleveland gets no Draymond.
And then Curry fouls out in Game 6.
Well, that's part of the game, so I don't really count that.
I'm just saying, for a guy that almost never fouls out, that is that's a lucky break for Cleveland. Yeah. I'm not saying it's a bad ref thing, but it is lucky for Cleveland. He fouled out that game pretty early too. That matters. A guy that never fouls out.
That's why I stay away from the. Well, this is they're fortunate in terms of who their path. They got to play an 8, I'm like, it doesn't matter.
You won. Beat the team. Beat the team in front of you.
It doesn't matter. And we'll be having this discussion in a 12-team playoff too, right?
David, hang on a second. We'll get to you right after the break here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, DB, Ravi, Lulla. We are available wherever you get your podcasts as well. But if you're not in the stream this morning, you're missing out on a very
it's pretty spirited in there.
Spirited discussion on what we're talking about here with winning in sports. I'm going to get to Travis R's comment here in a second, but I want to get
how about Jeff's?
Yes. They're both kind of in tandem. I want to get to those in a second here, but I want to get to David on the phone here first. David, what's going on, man?
Hey, what's happening, fellas?
What's going on, buddy?
I'm all right, man. I'll admit I'm kind of a sporadic listener. I listen when I can, when I'm not working. When I got an opportunity to, I'll definitely try to, listen in for you guys. But
appreciate it.
I got to tell you, man, I feel like Chef Boyardee, our boy Ravioli's been cooking lately.
Look, he likes that too. Look at him. He's over here got that poop eating grin.
It's clever, so I'm going to let it slide, but only my mom and sister call me that.
You been cooking, Ravi? Ravi with the hot takes. Okay.
I agree with him on the Popovich take last week, being the better coach than Phil Jackson. I was listening to him today talk about, the Bills and this, that, and the other. But, I did have a question that kind of came up, and I got 3 high school questions, if that's okay with you guys.
Hey, if I can fire one back at you, because you're the perfect guy to ask about this discussion on the high school level. Let me go. You want me to do mine first?
Oh, no, yeah. I'll do it, and you can fire one back at me. My first
go ahead.
You guys were talking about, my first thing you guys were talking about, should Andy Reid have won more? That's the question I want to ask you guys. He had 4 straight championships with the Eagles. And let me preface this by saying I'm a huge Andy Reid guy. I'm an Eagles guy. I'm a huge Andy Reid guy. He had 4 straight NFC championships with the Eagles. Didn't make a Super Bowl.
He made one.
He
made one and lost to the Patriots in 03, 04 maybe.
Yeah. Yep. So I think some people, if he did, I remember when he won the first one, how much people talked about he needed it.
Yes.
Right? I remember that being a thing, but it was in regards to cementing his greatness.
I also think
because people thought he was a Hall of Famer before he won the first one.
For me, it was about he deserved one. Like, I wanted him to – like, I'm a 49ers fan. They were playing the 49ers, and one of the things that made me feel better about it was that Andy Reid got one because I really like Andy Reid, and I thought he deserved one. But, like, you can make the argument he maybe should have won more, but he's racking them up now with the Chiefs, so it's not going to look that way. Like, in the moment, it looked that way, probably with the Eagles, but at the end of his career, it's not going to look that way because he's going to end up with somebody with Mahomes.
You want the college comp, though? That was kind of Coach Osborne's.
Yeah, it's T.O.
That was his trajectory.
Right, he went 22 years.
And then 94, 95 just changed the
entire narrative. Yeah.
Because I think before that, we'd have been looking at 82 and 83 a lot differently.
Look at 93.
Yeah.
You look at a lot of those years a lot differently.
And maybe the Eagles would have actually won that Super Bowl if McNabb knew how to handle his liquor.
Boy, I've never seen a guy put in more good years in a city and have nobody in the city really give him any love, man. They hate on me.
I actually do like Donovan McNabb. You know, obviously his antics after he left, and I mean, everybody blamed Terrell Owens initially, but it sounds more the story. There's a lot more to the story with what happened there. But can't blame Terrell Owens. The guy came in, did what he did, played well in the Super Bowl, and McNabb did too. But it just wasn't enough.
Yeah.
I mean, T.O. balled out on a broken leg in a Super Bowl. Like, I'm not going to hate on T.O.
Hell yeah.
T.O.'s one of those guys that's aged a lot better than
we would have thought.
Yeah, 100%. So high school football. I got 3 questions in there.
Okay.
Things I've been thinking about that I want to ask you guys. So I'll start with number 1 because, Damon, I think you know that I'm kind of close to Bellevue West. You know,
so my question I was going to ask you is, do you think, and this was on the heels of Coach Huffman saying, you know, we go 7-4 around here and it's the end of the world. You know, a lot of programs would love to be 7-4, like he said that in the paper. And I just wondered, do you think people think Bellevue West, and he's got 2, right? Do you think people think Bellevue West should have won more?
Yes, I do think.
Isn't that weird? Because I think you're right. I think.
Do you think they thought Woodard should have won more too?
He won a ton.
You know, I don't know about the Woodard portion.
Well, so let's rewind it back a little bit when he's losing 4 out of 5 or whatever it was to Central. At that point, people thought he should have won more.
Oh, good.
Like he caught some late, right? He caught some late that kind of made up for it. But when he's sitting there and losing a bunch to Barons at Central, like. How many people at Bellevue West were like, hey, why can't we get a couple more of these?
Yeah, you know, I think I look at the programs, you know, when you look at the prospect positions, right? So, you know, who Central had at the time, you know, when Bellevue West ran up against that Millard North team, I mean, you're talking, you know, a guy that's at USC, a guy that's at Wake Forest. One of them's probably going to be a first round.
Jane Jackson went to Old Dominion.
Mm-hmm. Or Johnson.
Jane Johnson, I said Jackson. Jane Johnson.
Jason Green's.
So,
Jason Green's at Creighton.
Running into a little bit of a talent, you know, a portion of it all. I think with Bellevue West, I mean, God, you look at it in the years they had Ducker and they had Michael Riley Ducker and they had Helms and, you know, and it just seems like opportunities lost. And Johansson, while people criticized him, was a pretty damn good quarterback himself. Like he wasn't no punk. Like, you know.
My favorite thing about him is that most people don't know unless you're close to it or you follow it is he could get coached hard and still function. Like sometimes kids can't receive that kind of that intensity and that scrutiny. And I mean he followed. Like who wants to follow Glance?
Yeah,
I know I wouldn't. I mean,
LJ Johnson was an absolute monster.
Yeah,
I mean it's just they had a strong talent level. You know, and I'm a Bellevue West fan. Like I enjoy watching I think Huffman's a great coach. I do have concerns with some adjustment portions of it all, especially against really good teams like Westside. You know, they come out in the second half and don't seem like the adjustments are quite there like they are on the opponent's side. But, you know, at the same time, it's you know, he's building a program and he's doing the best he can, which, you know, was going to my question, Damon. I think you and I are kind of on the same wavelength. Is this going to be the first year that Bellevue West's defense may be better than their offense?
Yeah, I could see that, and I could see him kind of changing his philosophy too. Like he could get back into more quarterback run game, and running the football. Even though his quarterback he's a great arm talent, but it will be interesting to see if they play to their strengths, because I think you're right. They could be pretty good defensively. I'm watching that opener against Central close.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I look at the talent on each side of the ball, and I really like Will Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
I really like TJ Whaley, but there's questions at the receiver mark. I know
I'm a big Whaley guy. Listen, Dave, he's tough. We knocked him around pretty good, and he just kept coming. Like that showed me I'm a Whaley guy. I would like to see him do well. I mean, not in week 4, but I would like to see him do well.
You put him on the defensive side of the ball, and they got Stanley Hayter. They got Whaley's going to be playing probably some defensive line. Jules DeDoit, a couple games I went to, was really impressive.
Yeah, he gets after the passer. It will be so. And I'm not coaching those guys, but the more he gets two-way guys to buy in, the better, because that means he gets involved defensively as a head coach. Like the more they buy into that, the better that team will be. Just my opinion on the outside.
100%. I think Bellevue West has always been at their best with the power run game. I think that's when they've always been at their absolute best.
100%.
I've seen some of the same clips from the rule camp. It looks like maybe they might be putting DeDoit at running back some. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But second question: will Gretna East be a better football team than Gretna this year?
I don't know. We've got them today at 2:30 in our battle of 7-on-7. So I'll get a chance to see them. But the strength of that team may be up front. So maybe 7-on-7 won't play to their strength. So you may be right. It's just hard for me to count out Gretna, but
I like Krecht as a prospect in that quarterback position. They got Mason Gunn.
Yep.
They got the defensive back. They got Jaden Fisher's not. He seems like a pretty damn good athlete themselves. But I think about what Gretna lost. Every key position you're talking between quarterback, running back, defensive end. Wide receiver with Joey Veith. They lost a lot.
Yeah. I'll be curious to watch, but I'll know a little more. And like I said, 7-on-7 won't tell me a ton, but I get a chance to see some of their personnel at least.
All right, last question, and then I'll let you guys go. The Omaha North, Omaha Central game, will that be the most talent-picked game in the state?
Maybe.
Dave, we appreciate the call. We'll talk to you again soon. Coming up next, we got Brian Edwards, our Vegas insider here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. We are joined now by our Vegas insider, Brian Edwards. B, what's going on, man? Oh, he left. He's gone.
What's up, fellas?
How you doing?
How we doing?
Good. How are things? We're off and running. I mean, wouldn't be BS without a little of those hiccups.
I'm a little sunburned this morning. I see. I got a little bit of sun. Doing? I was out at the beach yesterday. It was one of those cloudy days. You didn't think you were getting much sun, so you didn't put on much sunscreen.
Are you out there playing frisbee with the dogs, man? What are you doing? Fishing?
Throwing the football. Drinking cold beer.
What is your cerveza of choice?
Oh, Budweiser bottle, Bud Heavy.
Really?
He likes the diesel.
Interesting. Okay, the more you know.
Bud Heavy.
How many of those are we getting in for UFC this weekend?
Oh man! So hey, it's an afternoon card, right? 3 o'clock Eastern main card. I like that.
And by the way, you 100% jinxed Chandler and McGregor.
Yes, I did. I mean,
he's like,
I did.
I don't know.
I don't know if he's going to make it, but let's bet a lot on Michael Chandler just in case. Man, I hate that because that was going to be an easy win. But what do you? I don't think we're. Do you think we're ever going to see him again?
I was just gonna say I don't think McGregor fights again. I think Dana's kind of had it.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I mean,
Probably.
he kind of gave you an undeserved chance just because he understands that you can print money.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. The question is,
And he went out on a limb. I mean, you know what I mean? Like he played the game with you for the reward. I don't know if he'll get him to do that again.
The question isn't whether or not Dana White's tired of Conor McGregor. It's whether or not he's tired of making money.
Right. Right. I think he'll maybe do it one more time, but with some major backup plans just in case.
What? It is hard to turn down that payday.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
you probably make that deal because
it.
people are gonna want to. People are curious.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're Chandler, I think you got to move on. And look, just get a fight right now because that doesn't mean you still can't fight Conor in the long run. You know, down the line. I mean, when's Conor going to be ready? Not in 2 months.
Did Conor strike you as a guy that wouldn't care much about his legacy? You know, he knew he was a cash cow, and maybe he's good with that, but he's not aging well in the sport.
No, not at all. But did he strike me as somebody that cared about his legacy? Yes, but I mean, once you get that much money and have that much fun, etc., that you know, all that thought process toward the legacy can evaporate real fast.
It's kind of weird with fighters, isn't it? Because it seems like some fighters, whether it's boxing, MMA, UFC, whatever, it seems like some of them are very much about kind of the lifestyle that the sport affords them, and then some of them are very much about their sort of place in history and their legacy.
Sure.
And I always got the vibe that McGregor was the former, not the latter.
Right. Yes. And
that's kind of unique to fighting, though, isn't it? We don't see that a ton with like high-profile guys in others, like in team sports.
I don't know.
Right.
I think John Jones may be a little bit of both.
That's fair.
that's fair. That's fair.
Right?
Although with the drug test, I have to think he's way more about the lifestyle than his legacy. Otherwise, he'd stop.
I don't know, but I know every time he gets in the ring, he's terrifying. Like, I don't care who you are. He's ruined everybody that he's seen.
Yeah.
But now, hey, wouldn't you I would take Aspinall to beat him.
As a natural big guy, is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I just don't think anybody's beating Aspinall anytime soon. Is my opinion.
At no point do I feel comfortable picking against John Jones.
That's understood, but I would pick against him with Aspinall.
Even with his repertoire, he can beat you a lot of different ways. He uses his legs like jabs. I don't know.
I think he's slowing down. I mean, obviously he looked great.
You like the younger, stronger Lion.
Yes, I do.
Okay,
yes, I love Aspinall.
I wouldn't talk you off of that.
All right, so this weekend on the card, you've got Pavlovich to beat Volkov. Is that what we like?
Yeah.
Yeah, and to do so in round one. So Pavlovich, going into the Aspinall fight, he had won 6 fights in a row, all in round one. But then that got snapped against Aspinall in November. But he's had 7.5 months off pretty much, and I think he gets back into the win column, and I think he does it by first round knockout, how he had been doing all his fights there for a while. Now Volkov's good, no doubt, but if Pavlovich touches you, you're in trouble, and so I'm gonna put Pavlovich in a so that's a plus 135 payout to win in round one, and then I'm gonna do Pavlovich and Whitaker in a parlay. Pavlovich is minus 225 on the straight price. Whitaker minus 155. Whitaker's had a full camp. Alice Garoff just took this fight on I think 11 or 12 days notice. Now he's got 2 first round wins, but big step up in competition. And Whitaker's had a full camp. So that parlay nets a plus 137 return. The only fight that I'm interested in for now without seeing weigh-ins. I'm probably going to put a little small play on Daniel Rodriguez as a plus 190-ish, 95 dog to Gastelum. Gastelum 2-6 in his last 8. Rodriguez has won 4 in a row. Now he's lost back-to-back, but to good guys, Brady and Magny. And that's what I've got so far on the UFC in Saudi Arabia.
Hey, not to fast forward to July 27th, but since you brought up Aspinall, and I mean, he said out loud, he said it for a couple of weeks now, he doesn't need John Jones, which, okay, whatever. You want to create your own legacy. I get it. But he's going to get Curtis Blades. You seen a guy that had as much upside as Blades kind of fall off in terms of fanfare like Blades? Like it seemed like he was out of mind in a hurry for the aspirations we had.
Yeah, every time he got knocked out by Ngannou, which was twice, every time he got on a serious roll, then he had to go against Ngannou, got knocked out twice. He was on another pretty good roll, and then the Black Beast slept him. And now he's off the good win against Almeida, who I didn't think anybody was going to beat Almeida for a while. And that's a nice win for him, but I think it gives us good value on Aspinall. Now, I don't like to pay minus 200 prices, but I will be putting Aspinall in a parlay, and I doubt that prop to win in round 1 is out yet, but let me hit.
Because that was the one where Aspinall tore up his knee, right, against Blades the first time.
Correct. First kick, like 10 seconds in.
Snap.
Yep. So, like I said, I don't think Aspinall is getting touched anytime soon.
It was 2022 too. It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, I don't like those. Are the ones I don't like that much.
Now, B, let's get to the one because he's chomping at the bit, and my man has done so much research on this. We went back to 2001 for the Iowa Hawkeyes in a win total. How many seasons do you think Iowa has had where they have won less than 7 games, not including the COVID year where they were 6-2? How many years since 2001 do you think Iowa has lost won less than 7 games?
I'm going to say 1. Or is it 0?
Not a bad guess.
That's actually 3.
3.
But
I still think that's staggering.
2 of them were 6s,
Yeah.
and we only had 1 where they missed a bowl in that stretch.
Since 01.
Okay. Yeah, that's impressive.
He thinks Vegas has made an egregious mistake setting this line at 7.5.
Is an absurd number.
I love it over. Don't you, Ravi?
I would. I'm hammering.
He's locking them in for 10 in his sleep.
The right number in my mind is 9.5. Looking at their schedule, I don't know how you set that thing below 9.5 and think you're going to make any money.
Yeah, I mean, I like it over. I don't think I'm quite as bullish as you, but I think they got a great chance to win 9. And I mean, if I feel pretty confident in a 1.5 game, edge over the line, or the line 7.5, and I feel pretty good about them winning 9, then I'm in. So yeah, I like them over. I mean, at Ohio State is the only for sure underdog spot, right?
Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of tight lines. I mean,
yes.
Yeah,
but
that's the only for sure, L.
Yeah, that's the only one I look at and I go, that's a loss, right? Everything else is either win or coin flip, and Iowa wins coin flip games. Like that's just what they do as we've seen the last 20 years.
I mean, they have not given up more than 19.9 points per game in a season. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 7 years in a row, they haven't given up 20 points a game. They only give up 14.8 last year. They've got 8 starters back on defense. They only lose 18 lettermen.
And if Cade McNamara is healthy, that's 10 wins. If Cade McNamara is healthy, they're winning 10 games. Like full stop.
I mean, they have 7 of their top 8 tacklers back. I mean, they won 9 in the regular season with McNamara going out. When did he go out? Early October or late September?
Yeah, and some of the worst quarterback play. Like Deacon Hill at Utah Tech this year, B.
Right?
That's a real thing. I didn't even know it was a school.
Oh, jeez.
The starting quarterback from last year is at Utah Tech.
All right, you guys are locking them in at 7.5.
Give me the over.
Give me the free money, B. We appreciate it as always.
Thanks, B.
All right, fellas. Thanks, guys. Y'all have a great weekend.
We're live on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. And we're joined by the one and only Michael Bruntz from Husker 24/7. Bruntsy, what's going on, man?
Hello.
Hello, Bruntsy. What's up?
What's going on?
Oh, man, I don't even know how we did it, but we started with this development and winning, like just kind of this season Nebraska could or should or whatever have in terms of wins. And it morphed into like being able to say at some point, hey, they should beat program X, right? Like, listen, the most important game of the year isn't UTEP. Like, they should beat UTEP. Yeah. Being able to say that out loud.
Yeah.
Then it morphed into how many – what did it kind of go into?
Kind of went into like, okay, how many like titles should you win when you're good? And does it matter to make it to a certain point versus actually breaking through and winning? Because we were talking about, that should word.
Getting places and losing versus getting there
or not getting there at all.
Right.
We got into this should word a lot, and a lot of people have a lot of feelings about the word should, right? Like, for example, we're using, like, we'll go baseball. I know, like, 90s baseball is, like, right in your wheelhouse, right? Like, you look at the Braves winning, 12, 13, 14 division titles in a row, and you're like, yeah, probably should have won more World Series in that stretch.
That's fair.
So the thing about it is, Bruntz, is we had a hard time distinguishing, like, what's the cutoff? Like, when do we say, gosh, you know what?
It's good to be this good.
It's good to be this good, but, man, Aaron Rodgers is awful talented to have only
played in one Super Bowl.
Played in one Super Bowl, right? Does it sounds wishy-washy, so there is some mythical distinction. I made the case to Ravi. I said, you want an extreme? I said, all Dak Prescott would have to do is get to a Super Bowl to validate his statistics. He doesn't even have to win it. And I feel comfortable saying that. Like, you don't. He's like, can you imagine Dallas just getting to a Super Bowl, though, with Dak?
Well, Dallas is one of those franchises, though, where it seems like the narrative probably goes crazy like them being involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's like a certain number of franchises in pro sports, I feel like, where whoever the player is probably gets more, I don't know what the right word is, kind of oomph behind the discussion just based on who they play for. I mean, I feel like the Lakers are that kind of franchise. I feel like
Dodgers.
Yeah, the Dodgers. I mean, the Yankees are probably that way too. I think the Cowboys are probably that more than any franchise in the NFL. So yeah, I mean, I think he'd probably get a little bit more benefit just being the quarterback of the Cowboys and getting them there. But I don't know. I mean, you guys are like deep in the weeds in like late June conversation, by the way. It's funny, like the feeling of like should and when like it's kind of past. I mean, it's just kind of like a gut feel almost.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you guys brought up Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it feels like he kind of crossed that threshold a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, where he should have at least been two more Super Bowls.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting discussion. I mean, I think. As it probably pertains to Nebraska, I mean,
would Michael Bruntz have the stones enough to say in 2022 if you think Nebraska's whatever you think it is 7 or 8 wins? Because I think you're in that category, right?
2024.
2024. Would Bruntz? Would you say, man, Nebraska should beat Colorado? Like, would you say that out? Does your personality or your thought process allow you to say that out loud?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
I mean,
You've officially put your big boy pants on then.
Yeah, look at me. I got both legs. I usually screw up and I try to put both feet in the same pant leg, and I actually just did that with my youngest earlier today, and that was about a 20-minute thing. But
listen, when you wear as many stretchy pants as my daughter, I do it at least twice a week.
Yeah, and then it never quite gets over the hill, and then everybody gets frustrated, and there's crying by everybody.
And then you go to just sit down. It's easier that way.
Yeah, just let me do it. Sit down.
Much
Yeah,
weeping
we're
and gnashing of teeth.
We're definitely at the I do phase of everything, which is a horrible and fun place to be. But yeah, I mean, I would say Nebraska should beat Colorado. I mean, looking at Nebraska's schedule, the way that it shapes up, I mean, is it the should point of Nebraska should be? I'm looking at the schedule now just to check my math here. I mean, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Should they be 5-1, 6-0 at after the Rutgers game? I mean, in early October, are we to that point?
I said they should be
It might be
no.
premature, but
I said they should be no worse than 5-2 after 7.
okay, that's fair. That's fair to me. Is Rutgers the hardest game in that stretch?
Yes, I believe so.
I do think Rutgers is better than most people think. But maybe now that maybe now that you asked me that question rhetorically, or I assume no, it wasn't rhetorical. You'd like a real answer, but
I want an answer.
it might be. But because I do think Rutgers is going to be pretty good. I actually kind of think their win total is a little low. But you know, if I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt to win some coin flip games too. I think that's going to be a really good football team. They're going to look a lot like Nebraska wants to.
I don't know what their quarterback thing is going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting they made there, but I that defense should be legit. Special teams is always generally good with Shiano. So, but yeah, I mean, I if you're having the should conversation, I mean, I think Nebraska should be bowl eligible by middle of October. I mean, that's the way it sets up in my mind.
I just think people are terrified to go out on a limb.
Because if you say it out loud and it doesn't happen, then you have to eat it.
Because you're coming off a 5-1 season.
I can say it should. I'm not saying it will.
Yeah.
There's another layer of big boy pantsness that's going on there. Maybe doing a belt. That's the difference there.
You seem like more of a suspenders guy to me, Bruntz. Not doing this.
I was going to say drawstring, but that might be doing too much.
Belt loops. That's the next step is belt loops.
That's true. You got to switch from the drawstring to actually having belt loops. Whether you put the belt loops on or not, that's a whole other different story. I think I think part of what DB said there is true, where people don't, because there is a difference, like you said, between should and will. But there's also this, I think, as a fan base, I think maybe there's a little bit of, and you've got a pretty good pulse on, I think, how a lot of the populace thinks on this is, you know, there's this hesitation because it's a little scary to say the thing you want out loud. And Nebraska wants to, I mean, like Nebraska very plausibly, I'm not saying even should on this, but plausibly could be 7-0 by October 19th. Like that's on the table. And it's okay to say that out loud. And it's okay to say like, hey, if you could be 7-0, you probably should be 5-2 looking at that schedule. But that's scary because Nebraska hasn't been able to execute the shoulds lately. They haven't been able to turn the shoulds into wills.
Oh yeah, I mean the shoulds have been, you know, worse than a coin flip. I mean it's interesting though. I mean it's you're going to have to win some coin flip games in there more than likely. Mm-hmm. But I don't know about your guys' sense, but mine is from Nebraska fans I talk to. I mean, after a decade of just being hit over the head with poor results, I think everybody is just really scared of having
expectations,
having some expectations. Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, we get to October and you get to fall camp and everybody kind of starts, I think, being a little bit more positive about things. And that's just kind of the natural order of things. But I don't know. I mean, that schedule to me feels like a schedule where you can get a lot of momentum going. And, you know, it's going to be on Nebraska to do the little things because those are teams that you have to do those things against.
Speaking of little things, Bruntz, is it which do you think is easier to come by? Good special teams play or good quarterback
Ooh,
play?
here we go.
No, man.
Just generally speaking in college football. Good special teams play or good quarterback play?
Well, Nebraska, it's been difficult to find both.
It's kind of where it came from.
Kind of where it came. It's exactly where the question came from.
Yeah, it feels like to me that good special teams play can kind of be covered up if you have a couple of good specialists. And I understand that it's like how you emphasize things, what you kind of do as a program, and that has a lot to do with it. But I mean, if you've got a field goal kicker that can just knock it through the pipes, or you've got a punter that can kind of avoid the shanks, I feel like that's a little bit easier to come by. It feels like the quarterback play piece of it's a little bit more, it's a little bit more dependent on everybody else. And I don't know. I mean, I think
you're sounding pretty smart so far, Bruntz.
Okay, well, that's good. I'm on the right track here.
Well, if DB's track is the right track, well, that's
well, it was interesting because what sparked this is I'm like, you know what, like if Nebraska is consistent with their special teams, Dylan doesn't even have to be great. I don't even know if he has to be good. He could just.
If special teams and defense are good, Dylan can be average and they'll get to 8 wins.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair thing.
But Ravi clapped back with he thinks it's easier he sees
common
to see good quarterback play in college football than good special teams. And I thought
my argument
at real time it sounded absurd, and when I say it out loud again today, it sounds even more absurd.
My argument, Bruntz, was that it's more common to get good quarterback play because special teams are often neglected.
Yeah, those are. I can see both sides here, guys.
Mr. Switzerland. Didn't they tie yesterday? Was it 1-1?
It was.
Fudge. Milk toast?
But I would say it's probably a little bit easier to get to average special teams play than it is to get just average quarterback play. That's where I would lean. And I think it's just because you can get the right guy, the right couple guys. And I don't know that I think Nebraska would benefit greatly if their two chosen guys had decent seasons this year on special teams.
Mm.
Yeah, I think listen, I'm not saying that they don't need good special teams. I'm here for Dylan can be average as a freshman and they can get to 8 wins if they do the other stuff right.
Are they an 8-win team if they're just like if they're good to okay in 2, but not so great? I would say deficient in the 3rd.
Depends on
the barstool stand.
What you just said is actually what I'm after. I've said this, Bruntz. If Nebraska can just be really good in 2 of the 3, and I would prefer it to be defense and special teams in this year of the Big Ten, then I would let's say offense and defense. Because I don't want to get into shootouts either or stuff like that, then I think Nebraska can be just fine. And I can do that without lowballing Raiola because I think, he has superstar talent. I just think it's hard to be a really good quarterback young without all the other pieces.
I mean, I've got the numbers on true freshmen. It's hard. But my question is, so to kind of throw it back at you, Bruntz, depends on how deficient they are, right? And in what ways they're deficient, right? Because if you're deficient like Iowa is on offense, but you don't hand anybody anything.
Yeah, when your opponents are starting inside the 10 every
survivable,
opportunity you
right?
get. Yeah.
But if you're deficient the way Nebraska was on offense last year, that's not.
Could you be middle of the road in offense and special teams and get what you got last year on defense and get to 8? I think you could. I don't think you have to be like a top 25 offense. I mean, I just think 75th? That would be a pretty dramatic improvement from where they were last year.
I think I got them to top 60 on offense, which is 24-ish points a game, and top 40 on defense, which is 20-ish points a game. And that puts them, historically, those numbers get you somewhere between 7 and 9 wins.
Should there be a natural regression or progression given the way the defense played last year against that schedule? Because I think that's where you better start.
I don't know. I mean,
that's the unit we know the most about, so that's why I say that, right?
Well, that's the if you get into the should conversation. I mean, why should they take a step back? I mean, they don't lose much personnel wise. I mean, you linebacker and safety are a little bit concerns for me, but I can buy that they'll be as good as last year at those spots. You kept the entire coaching staff, which is huge going into year 2 of a defense.
Yep.
And
you got some young guys that should be better.
And you got
okay.
You
got guys that you can go right down the line. You got James Williams, Van Poppel should be better in year 2.
Cam Lenhart and Prince Manuel for sure. They were young, green.
Yeah.
I mean, Kai Wallens, coming off a redshirt year. They keep saying Elijah Judy is a kind of the X factor on that defensive line. I mean, you get the second year of Bullock as a linebacker.
MJ Sherman looks fit.
Yeah, I mean, Prince Wall is in his sophomore season. I mean,
haven't even said Jamari Butler yet.
Yeah, I mean,
and he's their leading Tiffle guy.
I don't know why there should be that group more than any. I think is fair to have high expectations about, given what we just talked about.
What we know about him. Yeah.
So how important is it? Because we haven't got to him yet. That like a guy like Sierra Wright is on campus this weekend, or will be on campus this weekend from SC. Is kind of an unexpected portal entry.
Surprise, surprise.
I mean, he walks right into a room or a side of the ball if he says yes to Nebraska, where he's their highest rated defender on the roster.
Yeah, he would be. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it's a need thing, right? I mean, because I saw Bly Hill walking around during camps when I was covering things this week, and he was still had the leg brace on or the knee brace on when he was walking around. I mean, you need some kind of proven competition there, because it still feels a little bit unsettled back there with what they're going to do and where guys actually fit and where they want them to fit. So, yeah, I mean, that's a nice kind of late potential piece there, and a guy that's at least somewhat familiar with Nebraska. He didn't visit, but they were in his top group when he was deciding the first time around. So
yeah, he's got double-digit starts.
Yeah, different coaching staff, obviously. But, yeah, I mean, I think, from talking to our guys at USC, I mean, he was a serviceable corner for what they had there. And, if Bly Hill's not ready to go, I mean, you're kind of getting into the question about, do you play Malcolm Hartzog there, or is Jeremiah Charles ready? I mean, it's just a little bit of stability in a group that kind of needs it going into fall camp.
How much better do you feel about Nebraska's secondary all of a sudden, just with one guy if Sierra Wright's there?
A little bit better. I like having options and guys that have played there. Safety is a little bit of a concern still, just because Deshaun Singleton is such a large piece of that picture. I think you'd like a little bit more experience returning, but I trust Nebraska to kind of put the pieces where they need to go. I mean, everybody always kind of makes jokes about how many scholarship guys Nebraska has at defensive back, but I feel like they'll be able to find the pieces that fit there, and I don't think they're afraid to play young guys either if they're ready to do so.
100% agreement with you. I don't look at that as some sort of, oh man, it's not overstocked, right? I mean, they're going to tinker and move and figure it out, but they need some margin for error.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the scary part though, right? Is
yep. Yeah.
You have a Singleton situation again. It's okay, what now? What are we doing? But I mean, I think they kind of recruit that way to where you can kind of mix and match a little bit. And I mean, in a 3-3-5 with the number of defensive backs you're having to use, I think that's probably the smart way to go about it.
And if you're going to play Singleton, Buford, and Gifford at the same time, only one of those guys has made it through a season before.
You still have Hartzog there in that group?
That's why I think Bruntz said like he's kind of the wild card. Like, if he has to move, like you get thin in a hurry.
If you get Sia right, then maybe Hartzog doesn't have to move.
Yeah.
And then you've got Bly Hill,
and you can be patient. You can be patient with Charles.
You've got Malcolm Hartzog back at safety. You can be patient with Jamal Charles. You can be patient with Roger Gradney. You can be patient with Rex Guthrie.
Well, Gradney's already moved.
Yeah, you're right.
He's already moved the linebacker.
That's right. So you can be patient with some of those guys in a way that you don't like. That's why I asked the question, because like I know he's just one guy, and but it kind of shifts some of the pieces back into their proper place, and you feel like, at least to me, I would feel a lot more comfortable.
Right. You're not having to upset 2 or 3 positions.
Yes, exactly.
With moving guys around. Yeah, that makes sense.
And you wouldn't have to rush Bly Hill, or if you only wanted Charles to start out by getting 20 snaps or whatever the number is, like you could ease into that too.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be pressed into it.
No, I mean that's who was going to replace Quentin Newsome. I mean that's always going back to the spring. That was always kind of a low key question there. I
cannot get over how dismissive we were of Newsome. He was so good. And it's like, oh, no Newsome. I'm like, that guy was good.
He was good.
He was, and he loved taking on your guy too. Like Q was better than I think he's better than we lament over.
He was willing to run support, which I think was probably get up and
great call.
Stick his nose in there a little bit.
Bruntz, that is such a good call, because whether you're boundary or field, like you have to be willing. I mean, White talks about it all the time, let alone Coop and his toughness. You have to be able to tackle back there. Like, it's a thing. There is no.
Oh, so that's like,
because stuff gets spilled to corners all the time.
It's a non-negotiable for those defensive backs, especially with how many you play. They have to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think about how, in your mind, what's the ideal kind of way to bring along some of those freshmen? And we don't have to talk about DB in this segment, but I think Caleb's one of those guys as well. Where's your comfort level with getting some of those guys early reps in that defensive secondary?
Yeah, I mean, it's on the one hand, I mean, you do have so many guys, which I think does make it a little bit difficult. But I mean, for what those guys are going to get in fall camp, Nebraska, that's the benefit and kind of the beauty of the way they practice. I mean, guys aren't going to be standing over there just getting mental reps all fall. I mean, they're going to get in there and they're going to be practicing. They're going to be hitting. I mean, that
sans the hitting. It's like that now.
Yeah, I mean, they'll figure out real quick, I think, who has a chance to help them early on. And, I think the other thing that helps too is, I mean, James Williams is an example of this last year. Let's say game 6, the guy looks like he's ready to potentially help. I mean, they're not going to be shy about throwing him in there either. So I think I'm kind of always of the opinion, and especially with the way college football is now, you need to kind of figure out in practices what you've actually got with guys. I just don't know that you can baby guys, and I mean, there's kind of a mix and development, but also, I mean, you need to kind of figure out where things stand. So I think that's the way you approach it. You kind of know who your guys are likely going to be in the secondary, but if you get a freshman that's ready to go and ready to help you, or a guy coming off a redshirt year, maybe you have something there. I mean, I would not have had Phelan Sanford playing as much as he did last year on my bingo card, and they're willing to do it if a guy's ready.
That's Michael Bruntz, Husker 24/7. We appreciate the time as always, Bruntz. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Bruntzy.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. We've got Jack calling in on the Hurrdat hotline. Wants to talk about some special teams. Jack, what's going on, man?
All right. I thought about this all day yesterday. You guys are driving me nuts. Okay, the special team quarterback thing. I thought of a scenario, and you tell me.
Okay.
Everything's equal. The penalties, turnovers.
To a year ago?
It's pretty well equal. Okay. Just pick a team. I don't care. Pick
Okay.
a quarterback. I don't care. Okay. Our quarterback goes 17 for 28 for 235 yards and a touchdown.
Okay.
But we missed 3 field goals. What's the probability we lost that game?
High.
Everything is equal as far as rushing and turnovers and everything between the two teams, and not coming up with some scenario. Well, what if they fumbled 8 times?
Yeah. It's high. They didn't win that game.
And what is the turn it around? We make those 3 field goals. What's the probability we won that game?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other quick thing. I'm gonna let this one go because it's always interests me. I was listening to Skippy Newhousel the other day,
Yeah.
and sometimes I like to listen to Skippy because he says some pretty good things every once in a while. Can't stand his partner, but I like Skippy. That guy screams in the microphone constantly. It drives me nuts.
Yeah.
I can listen to him for about 5 minutes, and then I gotta go. But anyway, Skippy said that he was sitting in on Big Ten meetings with CBS, and the conversation got up about expansion in ACC. And he said, now what he knows and doesn't know, I don't know, but he said that the Big Ten people that he talked to after Notre Dame, which would be their plum, is North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
But the other one, which surprised me, and it wasn't Florida State, it was Virginia. And I don't think it's because of I like college basketball, but it financially doesn't move the needle like football does. So other than geographics, I've had a hard time with figuring out why that would be such a prize. But we'll see. What do you think about my scenario? And we'll talk to you guys another day.
All right, Jack. Appreciate it. Always love when he calls.
Incredible voice.
And he's pretty pragmatic too.
All-time voice. Great voice. Love that.
And of course I agree with it.
Well, yeah, I mean that helps you like him a little bit more.
Well,
You're right. I mean,
the analogies, it's easy to see it.
In that scenario, it is very easy to see. I think it's a little too in a vacuum to be applied to real life, but that's fine. He's right. If you, all things being equal, making field goals versus missing field goals is probably going to win or lose your games. Like that's true. I also think there's a lot more special teams than just the specialist. Now, like Bruntz said, if you've got a couple really good specialists, it covers a bunch of flaws, right? It can cover up a bunch of warts if you're not maybe doing some other things right.
Yeah.
Like
that Taylor guy in Iowa City.
Like I would even just make an argument.
Like that Taylor guy in Iowa City.
I would make an argument if you just have one and it's the right guy.
Are you more apt to get a Taylor or a Raiola?
I don't know. There's not a lot of good college kickers.
Wow. It's going. That's that hill you're just going to nestle up on and grab that old knapsack for a dirt nap. Huh?
I'm just saying. I've seen a lot of bad college kickers too. No, but the I don't even remember what we were talking about. You got me all.
The analogy in special teams.
Yeah, it's there. Like yes, like even if you've just got the one and it's the kicker, people will generally think you have good special teams if you make kicks.
So
generally.
Am I misremembering, yes or no, that when Buschini was on that 3 or 4 game stretch, we didn't talk much about place kicking. We talked about Nebraska starting like using him as a weapon.
Yeah, that's the thing that we talked about.
Okay.
I'm saying in general.
That wasn't to like make.
Yeah.
That was like.
No, it's something we talked about for sure.
Right, because if a guy's good enough.
Sometimes, but also, that goes in conjunction with the defense, too. Because generally, we're like, hey, we put him in bad starting field position, and then the defense takes over, and we feel good about it. And it was in contrast to the offense turning the ball over and putting the defense in really bad positions.
I still think you guys are missing the most glaring one.
Which one?
You need a punt returner.
Yeah. It's very important. Changes field position.
Makes
your offensive life a lot easier.
I gave you the
switches the field,
DPE gross thing. It's a long time ago.
I mean, I gave you DPE, but that's fine.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
it's been a long time since you had a consistent guy that could make splash plays in the return game. 100%. It's been a long time. That makes a big difference.
That's the one we got to get. That's the one we got to get to.
Which one would you take first? Punt returner or kicker? Like I can
like place kicking or kick
place kicking. So I'm
place kicking.
Okay, punt returner or punter. Place kicker is the top of the hill, right? Like he puts actual points on the board. You take him first over everybody else on special teams, right?
Is Nebraska's defense the same as it was a year ago?
Sure.
I may take a punt returner.
Over a place kicker.
No.
That's what, I asked the question.
You said punt. I gave you the first answer. You said place kicker, punt returner.
Yes.
I said.
So I was clarifying.
I said place kicker.
Place kicker's over everybody, no matter what.
Yeah.
Okay. So punt returner, punter. You're taking punt returner.
If Nebraska's going to play equally as good a defense, I may take the punt returner for this year.
What about in general, like not specific to Nebraska?
Probably a punter.
Because he more consistently changes field position.
Yep.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, but I mean, if I hammer you on your point yesterday where people neglected, I'd say, well, shoot, do people cover punts anyway, according to you?
I think they miss a lot.
They don't commit time and resources to it.
I don't think they do.
Well, then.
How many times have you seen a great punt returner get the ball kicked to them in a situation where it's like, all you have to do is not kick it to that guy?
I don't know, East Lansing 2 years ago?
Yeah.
3 years ago?
Didn't even kick it to the right side of the field. But how many, it happens a lot where you're just like, hey, just got to keep it out of this guy's hands. Where does it go? Directly to this guy's hands. Yeah. Hey, just got to make sure you get this ball in the air so your guys have.
I said that a couple times against Maryland last year.
All the time.
Because I thought that guy was a really good returner, and I was like,
that
thing better stay along the right hash or the left hash or whatever.
Let's get to Kurt here also calling in. Let's talk a little Nebraska defense. Kurt, what's going on, man?
Hey, guys. How we doing?
Kurt, what's up?
Hey, I'll start out by hoping you tell me I'm irrational after my question. Always a good way to start a conversation, right?
Oh, it's so irrational.
Yeah. So what I've thought about regarding Nebraska's defense is how much of last year, so on paper, right, we should be better. Like if you're just going strictly off of who we've got back, coaches, the whole nine, on paper we should be as good or better. How much do you guys put into knowing that the teams that we're playing now have film on a 3-3-5? They have some tendencies based off of what are the players that are coming back. Is there any weight in that? Because a part of me feels like I don't want to be overzealous that we're just going to take the world by storm again on defense.
No, I'm with you. Okay, that's legit. I don't think you're irrational, but so the way that coaches think about that is they're going to add to their cupboard too. Mm-hmm. So what you saw last year with as many returners as they have, so now you'll get into wrinkles and nuances.
Yeah, so
you won't have to play as vanilla if you want, just for lack of a better term. You don't have to stay as standard as you did a year ago. You'll have some more variations off of that.
Yeah, the framing of the house. Now you're starting to put walls in. And stuff like
that's the great equalizer there. And then the other thing I'll say is, everybody talked about Nebraska playing inept offenses last year, and that was part of it, and this, that, and the other. And if you really want to have some solace, just look at UTEP, look at Colorado, look at Northern Iowa, look at Illinois, look at Purdue.
They're not playing Murderers Row this year either.
Will those offenses be scintillating? Is Rutgers
to Indiana?
Right? Although I think Spaghetti, I think
he's good. I think he's going to be good. I don't know year one if they're going to be.
So those so for Kurt, those would be my things that would lead me to believe they could be kind of replicable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So that leads me to my other question. Do you think it's easier as a college football coach and program to build a stronger defense or offense?
Rules say offense, schematics say defense, in my opinion. I'd rather start by trying to build a good defense.
Interesting.
I know which one works better.
Interesting
Ask
question.
Michigan when they see Ohio State.
We appreciate the call. Coming up next, we are going to wrap up the show with Barry Tramel of the Tulsa World because, man, there's some weird stuff going on in the Big 12 country, and I don't think the rest of the country's far away either. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Wrapping up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. And we are joined now by Barry Tramel. He is a columnist for the Tulsa World and a longtime journalist in Oklahoma. Barry, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. How's things in Nebraska?
Good to talk to you, Barry. Good to talk to you again.
we're trying to keep everything with our heads above water with the College World Series and everything going on, but there's also a lot of big stuff going on in the college football world, as you kind of noted in your column yesterday, with some of the movement on the naming rights of a conference with the Big 12, which I thought was super interesting, just the concept in general. And then I see your column where you're talking, I guess, more positively about this potential, and more interestingly about how it's kind of time for the Big 12 brand to die off a little bit. Without giving away too much from your column so people still go read it, like what kind of led you to that point?
Well, I've thought the Big 12 needed a rebrand for a long time. You know, we started this conference 30 years ago with 12 schools, and of those 12, 6 are left. Literally half the conference is gone. All that's left are Kansas, Kansas State, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Baylor, and Tech. That's all that's left. And also with the Big 12, it's sort of a damaged brand, right? When people think of it, they think of it as a diminished conference. Conference that's lost its bell cows. Now Oklahoma and Texas. Before that, Nebraska and A&M, Missouri and Colorado to a far lesser extent. But so it's sort of a fractured conference is the national perception, which is accurate, but also a diminished conference in competition that's not, still great in basketball, but has dropped a tier or two in football. When you look at Big 12 football 15 years ago, 20 years ago, certainly, Big 12 was as good as the SEC and maybe better. I mean, no one sat around talking about SEC dominance in 2000 or 2002, 2004. The Big 12 was superior to the Big 10 and equal to the SEC, and nobody's doing that anymore. So, also the Big 12 has the history and the connotation of not getting along, contentiousness within the conference, infighting, all those things. So, to me, it's just sort of time. Give it a new name. Let everybody know. Right? It's a new day. It's a new league. The old ways with Brett Yormark, it's not even being run anywhere close to the way it used to be. It's not traditional conference in any way. So I'm all for, a rebranding. Now, I'm not crazy about the corporate nature of rebranding. Nobody is, but it's the reality. So just, my theory is just accept it and realize it's necessary and come up with the best corporate partner you can. And there's actually some cool names out there. All-State 12 is not great, but it's not terrible. It's not like State Farm Conference. All-State is sort of a cool phrase. Everybody in America, when they think of All-State, they think of two things. They think of insurance, and they think of, a quarterback who's made the state all-star team. So, to me, I didn't mind it. The thing I had the most issue was the 12. I don't know why you keep the 12. That's what I'm asking Brett Yormark first time. Why are you married to the 12? Hadn't had 12 in this conference since June 30th, 2011, when Nebraska and Colorado, their last day in the conference. That's my immediate thought on the rename.
So it's interesting because Yormark has said from day one, and he said it again the other day, listen, the Big 12 is open for business, right? We're going to explore all revenue options. And sometimes we joke here that, why do we still call it the Big 10? Because of so many teams, and it's time for a change anyway. But there is something about both those conferences, respectively, in terms of how they view themselves. The Big 10, right? You kind of know the air, the feel. This is this proud. It's unwavering. We're not going to really change with the times. We play 9 conference games, etc. I can't see the Big 10 changing a name, really. Although with a new commissioner, you would entertain a new revenue stream. Don't know if that's at the rights of a name change. But how ideal is it with Yormark and his philosophy that you could get outside the norm to maybe set some sort of precedent. I don't ever think the SEC will change. They're just because there's no number attached to it, right? But with the Big 10 and the Big 12, anyway, you could look at the Big 12 as like, okay, I see how much money they could potentially command from a name change. Maybe we would follow suit too.
Never underestimate collegiate administrators' ability to cave in on a point of principle in the name of money. They're always willing to do it. Now, I'm with you. The SEC brand is so potent right now. It's hard to believe they would ever mess with that. The only thing I could see is they could literally change the name of the conference to the SEC, supported by
like a bowl game presented by AT&T or whatever.
The Rose Bowl, like everybody went to corporate names for the bowl games. Sunkist Fiesta Bowl, Goodyear Cotton Bowl, all that's crap. The Rose Bowl went that far, and I forgot who their sponsors even were, but they didn't call it this whatever Rose Bowl. They call it the Rose Bowl presented by somebody. So I could see the SEC. The Big Ten, I don't think would do it either, but would be more likely than the SEC, just because that SEC, whoever's marketing the SEC these last 15 years, deserves an award because the marketing for the SEC is just through the roof, and much of it's deserved, but not all of it. So they've gotten a lot of mileage out of the SEC brand. So I would tend to think I would not touch that one.
So I know there's been a lot of consternation. We're talking to Barry Tramel of the Tulsa World. There's been a lot of consternation from people about the conference naming rights and things like that. But it's really not that outside. You mentioned the bowl games. Really not that outside of things that we're already used to seeing. Obviously, the bowl games are the most prime example in college football. But, college basketball, you see it with the exemption tournaments. They're always sponsored by somebody. You see it with, NASCAR's been doing it forever. The Winston Cup turns into the Sprint Cup, turns into whatever. They just name their trophy after their sponsor.
Right.
Like, do you prefer the corporate sponsorship over this? I kind of call it the boogeyman of college sports right now, this thing of private equity that people talk about coming in. Like, it seems like corporate sponsorship is the lesser of those two evils at this point.
Well, I would agree with you. Private equity potentially could make more money, but
a lot more risk.
I'm not sure that any colleges, university athletic departments, they've got to tread lightly when they get into private equity because two things. Those guys want their money back.
Yes. Yes.
And, I don't know that you want to get in business with those people.
Right? They made a living by selling off and stripping down the parts, right? Like, what do you have to give back in terms of your assets?
Yeah, I can tell you what private equity has done to journalism, and it's not pretty. So I would not, I'd be very wary of that. But, I mean, this is a enterprise, collegiate athletics, that has sold its soul on the financial side. So anything's possible. Literally anything's possible. And the university's incredible failure to, they're very much like the United States Congress. They're incapable of keeping their budgets in line. They're literally incapable. It's not anybody's fault. They're just all swept up in a tsunami. We can all go through the athletic departments at Oklahoma or Texas or Nebraska or Michigan and just see some nonsensical positions. Like most schools now have in athletic, like for football, they have a chief of staff. What does that guy do? I'm asking you guys, what does that guy do? I have no idea what he does.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. I think and it varies per school, right? So that's the reason that's kind of hard to give a definition. I could get you close on what he does at Nebraska, but that may not be the same as what's happening at at Ohio State,
the
right?
key is this. Here's the key. When you find out what somebody's title is, don't accept it and say, "What do you do?" And if they say, "I'm chief of staff," say, "I didn't ask you what your title was. What do you do?" And tell me what you do. And we just got so many of those guys. There are literally people. There are people whose job is to get the football coach places on time. That's literally somebody's full-time job, and they get paid. They're not getting paid $35,000. They're not a chauffeur. They're getting paid 10 times that to get the football coach somewhere on time. A guy making $8 million a year ought to be able to get himself to someplace on time. That's just what. That's the surplus. That's just the largesse that we live in college athletics.
That's Barry Tramel, Tulsa World. Barry, we appreciate it. Good stuff.
Good
Hopefully
stuff,
we'll
Barry.
soon.
Okay, good luck to the Huskers.
Appreciate it, Barry.
I got to remind you to call Durkin Designs if you've got anything you need in your yard. Pavers, water features, fire features, fencing, cleanup, maintenance, whatever. 402-779-4444. Be like DB. Call Durkin Designs, 402-779-4444. We will be back tomorrow to wrap up your week on Hurrdat Sports Radio.